The best kind of questions come through there. Yes.
No, I will not have a threesome with you and your wife. No, I will not send you nose fetish videos.
Should we compare? Just open the apps right now and be like,
Okay.
dude, should we say something? Okay.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to my podcast, The Mormon History Hoedown. My name is Kara Burrell. Sometimes I go by Nuancehoe. Here on my YouTube channel, I like to interview friends of mine in this ex-Mormon ecosystem, and nobody deserves an interview more than my good pal, Carly Bingham. Welcome to my show.
Hello. I feel like there needs to be like a round of applause.
There is.
Oh, okay, good.
There's millions of people out there
watching.
right now. So excited. So if you don't know Carly, you should. You go by Uncertainly Carly on TikTok and Instagram, and tell the people a little bit what you are known for and some opinions they might come across.
What am I known for? Probably currently I'm known for maybe just roasting the shit out of men in my comments on my Instagram,
which I hear you really enjoy.
I really do enjoy that.
Very forceful feminist, also very wise. Like John Dillon called me sharp-elbowed once, and I never heard that, but I was like,
that is such a boomer. Well, I know he's not a boomer, but that is such an older Gen X term.
I don't, unless we can find a better one.
Sharp-elbowed.
Yeah. So
I like that.
But somebody that you don't really like mess around with because they're gonna really give it to you straight.
Yes.
But also you're known for, I would say, doing some really funny AI generated content.
That is what I'm like. I guess that is technically what my claim to fame. Mormon influencers.
Yeah, explain that. Like what kind of videos you would make.
So ChatGPT came out like a couple of years ago now? I don't know. It's been a couple, like maybe a year and a half. So when DALL-E first came out, right, the image generator, OpenAI's image generator, I was seeing these things on Reddit that basically people were creating images and saying, okay, do more of this. And so it would just like escalate things in such a hilarious way. And the images at the time were very cartoonish. So it was very funny. It was just very like a caricature of whatever they were asking it to do. And for some reason, my immediate thought was, I'm going to make a Mormon influencer AI, make it more of this thing. I don't know why that first came to me, but it did. And so I just typed in the ChatGPT image generator. I purchased the plus version so I can make images. And I just said, make me an image of a typical Mormon influencer. And the first image popped up and I was like, this is amazing. And I was like, I just kept going. I was like, okay, more. And then just gave me all of these images.
What are some of the prompts that you're putting in?
I just said, that's great, but I need her to look even more Mormon. I need her to look more like an influencer. And so then it would give me an image of her standing in front of a temple, like taking a selfie of her in front of a temple. And I was like, this is so gold. And
it's like when you concentrate like the syrup of something and it's like even more sickeningly sweet and it's even more influencey, more.
Yes. And I was like, and then towards the end, I said, I need her to look like the utmost off the charts, hyper religious, intense, maximally whatever, an influencer, Mormon influencer to ever exist or whatever. And then it gave me this beautiful ending shot of like her with her, I don't know, Mormon husband/sons, and her standing in front of like a giant picture of Jesus. And it's very like Kim Kardashian-esque, and it was so perfect. And then I just put it all together, all the images, all the prompts, and then I put it against music. Can't remember. I think was it Beethoven? I think maybe, and made it a reel, put it on Instagram, and it took off. Like in one day it had a million views, and then within a few days it had 12 million views. And
really,
I had so many shares. Like people across the country were like, my friend, I remember Chelsea Homer was like, my Mormon grandma across the country like sent me this reel, and it's like, this is so funny. And most of my followers came from that, and it's been an amazing ride ever since. And then they took it down because of copyright restrictions.
Really?
So, no. So
I didn't know that. Oh, that's a
I think
shame.
like I uploaded a new version, but like the original version, I had to archive it because they're
Mm-hmm.
like, this is copyright. This music is copyright.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, fine.
Wow,
I'm like,
that's a
it's classical
shame.
music. I mean, come on.
Yeah, because it really builds.
Yeah, it really
Yeah,
does.
and you've done a few other ones like.
Let's see. Oh, and then I did one for ex-Mormon women. And that one, I actually was like, that one meant a lot to the women because like towards the end, again, they took that one down because of copyright music, whatever. But that one resonated a lot with the ex-Mormon women in a meaningful way because toward the end, I took the Joseph Smith script and flipped it and made it a woman, and she went and prayed and was visited by Heavenly Mother and blah, blah, blah. And then she creates like a matriarchal society and all that. And then I made one of Timmy Ballard.
Mm-hmm.
Did you watch that one?
I'm sure I did. It's not coming to mind right now,
Yeah,
though. Go on.
I just made one of his name was Jimothy Jallard or something like that. His name was like Jimothy, and I don't know, just like an insane caricature of like the whole thing, and people thought got a kick out of that. So so I made a few.
And you have a good sense of humor, and you have a sharp wit, and you know what the people kind of like want to see and what's popular. And outside of like AI generated funny pictures of what our Mormon culture is all about, like what would you say I guess you've been on TikTok and Instagram for at least since I started, I feel like since what, 2020?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like what first inspired you to want to go on there? What have been some of the main themes that you're passionate about?
I think I got on TikTok in 2020 because I left the church in 2019. So this is before the COVID cohort left. And then I started seeing some ex-Mormon content pop up and like comments, like Mormon commenters responding. And I thought, I can argue this better than like, not better than ex-Mormon content creators, but like, oh, I have a good response to this commenter, or I feel like I can stitch something that I can say that will maybe hit the mark, whatever. So I got on, I made a couple, I started making videos and just sharing my thoughts and opinions. And it wasn't like I wanted to get on and gain a following. I just wanted to get on and give my thoughts. And I already had an Instagram account, my Uncertainly Carly account that I made. I think I made them around the same time. So I started posting on Uncertainly Carly in 2020. I made a separate account just so that my Mormon family members didn't have to see me posting anything ex-Mormonish on my personal Instagram. And then I started, TikTok. And then I took a break for a little while, but yeah, I've been around like since the beginning days of ex-Mormon content creators.
And if you can remember back, like what were some of the first things that you felt passionate of where you're like, I'm going to turn on the camera. I need people to hear what Carly has to say about this.
At the time, I was really into street epistemology. I'm sure you like dove into that for a minute.
We interviewed Anthony Magabosco. I spent a whole weekend with him at Mormon Stories.
He's super smart. Like really loved his content. I listened to a lot of his YouTube videos.
Yeah,
and I was really into that. I read the book called
Manual for Creating Atheists.
Yes.
And why do I just read your mind?
You do read my mind. And unfortunately, the author, what is his name?
That I do not know.
Pete
Boghossian
or something like that. He's like off to the right, MAGA. That he's gone off his rockers anyway. But the book was good. The book was great, and it really just taught you how to like ask questions about knowledge, which is off of what is the philosopher's name? It's
Socrates.
No, it's like I forget. I'm so annoyed, but it's basically just the theory of knowledge, right? And so I was really into that. And I just myself am a pretty logical person. And I really ask a lot of why questions because I just want to know why about everything. And so a lot of my content in the beginning was a lot about that. Well, how do you know this is true? And how do you know something is false? Or how do you know something is true if you can't prove it to be false? Like that was like something that I really liked to point out to Mormons, especially. It was like, well, how do you know the church is pro-women because what does it look like if it's not? Like,
Mhm.
you need to create something that's false, that's not true. You need to know what it looks, what something doesn't look like. You need to know what something is not in order to know what it is. You know what I mean? So that's kind of like where I started from.
And it's been a long journey and a wild ride. And you said you took a break for a while and you're back sharing your opinions and owning Mormon bros. Just some of my favorite pastimes too, really.
It's the best pastime.
Yeah. And I got to do a quick plug to my friends over at Comedy Church with Adam Brown and Greg Kite, two hilarious comedians who created a genius concept. And I could not be more thrilled that I get to tell everybody about it. Adam's been on the program before, a hilarious guy who does improv and stand-up. So check out the link in the description below and please attend a Comedy Church show. I just went to one on Friday with a Lost and Found Club and hosted a Comedy Church. My two worlds of friends collided. Basically, everyone was there in this room. And I was like, I connected Chelsea with Adam. I am just such an influencer. I just made this whole thing happen. But I don't want any credit. I just want everyone to go to the shows. They're so fun. So link is down in the description. Support Comedy Church. Go laugh your ass off. Comedy Church, we love you. Back to the interview. Now, Carly, I'm really excited that you're here and we can just kind of like wind it back to learn more about you and how you like participated in the Mormon faith and what caused you to leave it and speak out and just kind of what your lessons from life are that you want to share and get to know more about Carly.
I'm ready.
Yay. Okay. Let's take it back to, like, what were your parents Mormon? Where were you born? And what kind of upbringing in the church did you have? For anyone out there who's Mormon or never been Mormon, like kind of paint the picture of what are the sights and sounds of Carly's upbringing.
Okay. So I grew up in Southern California. I was born in Santa Clarita. So if nobody knows where that is, maybe a few people, it is Magic Mountain. It's the same city, Magic Mountain in California at the theme park. And that's my hometown. That's where I grew up. And most of my siblings were born there. And when I say siblings, I mean 10 siblings. So
10 siblings.
Yes.
And so, okay, where are you in the 10?
I am the fourth oldest. So I have 7 siblings underneath me.
Wow. Okay.
Yep. It's a great time. And I love my siblings. They're really great, really funny, smart, intelligent, witty, very witty. So, born in Southern California to very Mormon parents. My parents, let's see, I'm like trying to figure out where do I begin. So we did all the things. My mom, I should say, did all the things, meaning she was a traditional stay-at-home mother and also made sure that we were raised correctly, meaning that we were raised to be religious and very devout in the Mormon church. She made sure we did family home evening and scripture study every week. I think we did family prayer for sure every single night, family home evening every single Monday, scripture study almost every night. Made sure we got to church on time, went to church every Sunday, fasted, paid our tithing. As soon as we were old enough to understand tithing after we were baptized, we were all baptized. And for being in Southern California, I really enjoyed being Mormon because it made me feel unique. It made me feel special. Like I was part of something special. And I think in Utah, it can kind of seem like, oh, everybody's Mormon, so you don't really feel that special. But in California, I really did feel like I was connected to something that made me feel like I stood out. And so for the most part, I really enjoyed growing up Mormon. And I don't have a ton of complaints about it as far as, a lot of religious trauma, especially when I know that other people had it so much worse, being gay, whatever. And I'm not queer, I'm not gay. And, but, I really did enjoy it. And sorry, go ahead. I thought you were going to say something. Okay. So it was great. I really enjoyed the youth activities. I had great friends. I had really great leaders. And my dad, the one thing though that was hard for me was that my dad was my bishop in high school.
So you had to basically confess or talk about personal things with your own father?
Yeah, I did not confess anything, even though I had a non-member boyfriend at the time.
That he knew about?
Yes, that he knew about, but I confessed nothing to my father. I was like, there is no way that I'm talking to my dad about anything. I mean,
Do you
I
think
couldn't
he
really.
suspected that you weren't confessing anything?
I'm sure, especially. I have a funny side story.
Please.
About my non-member side quest about my non-member boyfriend at the time. Let's see, he was my boyfriend from like the ages of like 16 and a half to about 18. And so we were at Thrifty / Rite Aid, the drugstore, and they sell ice cream, Thrifty ice cream there, and it's the best ice cream ever. And I'm there at Rite Aid with my non-member boyfriend, and we're looking at the ice cream counter, and he has his hand in the back pocket of my jeans. Okay. And my dad walks in and sees us. My dad, the bishop at the time. And he just walks by us and just gives us a thumbs up. And I look at my boyfriend at the time and I said, oh no. And I was mortified. And sure enough, my mom comes in later because my dad did not have the balls. This was what is so funny about my dad is that he was incredibly intimidating. He was a lawyer. He was really good at his job, brilliant, so smart, but was scared of his teenage daughters. Like he just could not converse with us at all.
I would be scared of teenage Carly too.
I know. Yeah, you should have been because I was a brat. And he did not come and speak to me. He told my mom. My mom came and spoke to me and she goes, so I know you've been dating your boyfriend. I don't want to say his name, but for a while. And I know that sometimes things can escalate and get a little hot and heavy. I don't even know what she said. And I just want to know if there's something like you need to talk about, if like things have gone a little too far. And I was incredibly defensive. I was like, I'm not talking to you about this. Like, leave me alone. And like, how dare you know we're not doing anything. And yeah, and it's just so funny. And still, no, never confessed anything to him because how's your dad? It's just no.
But did he ask you directly in Bishop's interviews? He
never
just was
did.
like, let's skip that
honestly,
section.
I don't even think he ever interviewed us, like, period. I think he just gave us recommends. And like, I honestly don't even remember being interviewed by him as my bishop.
Wow.
I think he was just like, nah, I'm not.
Just skate through that. Bless. He's like, they live under my household.
Also, so many kids, plus the whole ward that he has to take care of. Is like, nah, that's just one thing off my plate. I don't need to deal with that.
Yeah. So you had a boyfriend in high school that's a non-member, and did you wait till you were 16 to date though?
Yeah.
Yeah. But
he did get baptized, so.
Did he really? Oh, tell me, what was that like?
If you're listening, I'm so sorry. From the bottom of my heart. Very much flirt to convert, but not in a way that I was thinking that it was that's what I was doing. My mom, who might deny it now, Mom, I love you, if you listen to this, was very much against the idea of me dating a non-member. My oldest sister, who was the first daughter, I'm the second daughter, was very goody-goody Molly Mormon. And she's amazing. She is wonderful, compassionate, amazing, amazing person. But very, very good. And I was rebellious, meaning I dated non-members. I dressed a little immodestly, whatever. And I really... I was a brat, meaning I just really pushed back on a lot of things that adults were telling me at the time. I was really confrontational. And my mom really did not like that. And so my boyfriend really loved me at the time, and he really wanted to be with me for a while. And so he probably felt like he had to take the discussions. And so I took the discussions with him. And at the time they asked, like, on the second discussion, or do you want to get baptized? And I was shocked. I was like, what the fuck?
Was he religious in any other way?
He's Catholic,
okay,
but like Easter Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, he took the discussions. He like prayed about it. He read the Book of Mormon. He said, yeah, I think I want to get baptized because you feel like an answer to my prayers. And at the time I was like, oh my gosh. And now I'm like, oh, honey.
Mm-hmm. But
I'm
at the
so
time,
sorry.
like, did you have events in your life that, even if you were rebellious, did you feel like you had a strong testimony that like something had happened that bore witness to you that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints was true,
Yeah.
led by a prophet of God, that this is the one and only true church, and like this is the way you were going to live your life? Did you have experiences like that?
I think for most of my childhood and teenage years, I was just riding the coattails of like my parents' testimony, my older siblings' testimony. And I never really, I mean, I felt like I had a testimony, and I went to church, I went to Young Women's, and I had spiritual experiences at girls' camp. Really loved girls' camp. But I didn't really have like a spiritual confirmation until my family went to Nauvoo in, let's see, I think I had just graduated high school. And we went to Nauvoo. We did the whole church tour, meaning we went to Missouri, and then we went to Nauvoo. And in Missouri is where Liberty Jail is. And for those who don't know, it's a reconstructed version of the jail that Joseph Smith was in Missouri. One of the many times he was arrested for multiple reasons. And this was the time he was writing D&C 122. And he was so distraught, poor Joseph, and so persecuted. And he was asking God, why am I so persecuted? Why do people hate me so much? Asking God this. In his response, God said, side little backstory. So I was there with my family. We're sitting outside Liberty Jail, outside the reconstructed version of it. It's hot as hell. It's in the middle of summer. If anybody's been to Missouri in the middle of summer, it's literal hell. And it's like 80% humidity, 100 degrees. It's stifling. So we're sweating our balls off, and we're all sitting out there. We would just want to be done. We're exhausted. And my dad is standing up there reading D&C 122 and explaining the backstory of why he was in prison and all that. So he reads D&C 122, and I think one of the verses says, thou art, Jesus Christ has been to like the depths of hell or something like that. Art thou greater than he? Like girl, why are you complaining? Jesus Christ has been through way more than you. Shut up. Something like that. And that moved me so much. I don't know if it was the heat, if I was tired, but I just felt like, damn, what do I have to complain about? Me as this privileged little white Mormon girl. And I cried. I was like crying. And that was the basis of my testimony for so long.
Like feeling like the Spirit moved you to tears, that
for sure.
This man sacrificed as much as almost Jesus Christ.
Yep.
I've actually been to Liberty Jail too. And I went to go hold on to the bars at the windows to be like, Joseph Smith probably held on to these bars. I have touched
Joseph Smith.
Oh my gosh.
Touched these bars.
He's touched all the same things
all
that I've
the
touched.
Same things.
Yeah. Yeah. So Nauvoo is a really historical place for Mormons to go visit. And a lot of people establish some pillars of their testimony there. Sounds like. So you have this non-member boyfriend for part of your teenage years. And do you have any idea if he stayed active?
No. I don't think he did.
He didn't?
No, I'm pretty sure he did not. Yeah. I'm like, that's fine. Well, good on you.
Yeah. When you were raised a certain way in Mormonism, for the majority of us, it's very difficult to view a life for yourself that doesn't involve depending on a man and kind of sacrificing your life and your body to just your husband, your future kids, and whatever the pursuits that the church asks of you. So what was kind of your mindset graduating high school and for the rest of your life? Like, what did you envision for yourself? Did you have more of like a feminist kick to you, or were you like, I'm going to be a trad wife and go make some babies?
I'm going to be a trad wife and make some babies. I'm like, follow in my mother's footsteps. Not 11, but definitely multiple.
And do you feel like that came from a place that you look back and like you wanted that, or was it just so much conditioning? Because we have the kids now and we're like, well, I did want them, but also
yes,
I think I wouldn't have so many or something.
Yes. At the time.
So what was your mindset like?
At the time, 100%, I felt like that's what I wanted to do. I think I was hella conditioned to like be a good little mommy because I was the oldest, one of the oldest siblings and the second oldest daughter in a family of 11. And, you know, every time we visited my grandma or my grandma came to visit, she would always say, you're going to be such a good little mommy. Everybody would say that. Carly, you're such a good little mom to your siblings. You're so good. You're so good with these kids. And I remember telling my friends in middle school, I said, yeah, I've changed probably like 100 diapers. And they looked at me like I was proud of that. And they looked at me like, we've never changed a diaper. And I was like, I've changed so many. And I was so proud of that. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I was just like super parentified. And again, my parents did the best they could. My mom was doing the best she could. I don't resent her for that, but that's a fact. So I just thought this is what I'm supposed to do. This is what I'm going to do. And I did get into the University of Utah, and I went there for 1 year. And then I met my now ex-husband when I was 19. And we were set up on a date. And I was not a feminist at all whatsoever. I was barely thinking my own thoughts. And I met him. We dated for, a long time in terms of, relative to Mormon relationships for like 9 months. And then we got engaged. And I was married at 20 in the LA temple.
And then your life was set off to go ahead and live the Mormon dream. That was kind of the understanding that you would make babies and you weren't going to have a career, or were you planning on working, or what happened?
The interesting part is that my parents were huge on academic success. My dad, as much as I loved him, he's a complicated person, as we all are. Was very heavily focused on making sure his daughters especially had an education. And he was an enigma. He was very much into the church. And also I think he knew that he did not want us to fall into the trap of being trapped by babies and not having an education. He didn't want that for us, even though that was my mom's path.
Sure.
And he was very influenced by his mother, who died when he was in his 50s. She had brain cancer. Was very inspired by her. She's very smart, very intelligent, well-educated. And he wanted that for his daughters. And pretty much all our only like in-depth discussions that we had when I was growing up was about my grades. Are you getting good grades? What are your plans going to college? Like, what do you want to do? Like, what your grades aren't good enough, do this, do that. Like, be smarter, be better, do better. Like, being smart, you had to be smart. And so I did not so great towards the end of high school. I just kind of slacked off, didn't do well at turning in my work. I failed a couple classes, but I did get into the went there for a year, and then I got pregnant, and we moved back. So after I got married, obviously I got pregnant after like 9-10 months. And then we moved back to California to live with my parents so that my ex could do his master's degree. He graduated, he started his master's. I was working as like a receptionist at a hair salon at the time. And I did a few more. I guess I should say after we got married, I did do a couple more years of school, but I did not finish all my credits enough to graduate. So I never graduated, to the dismay of my father.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because that's slightly surprising to hear, because a man who has made so many babies and put his wife in the position that he might have seen, like, do you think that he had that previous to creating so many children, or did he look back in hindsight and say, I just want to make sure at least my daughters are not put in the same position.
I honestly don't know. I mean, now I wish I could ask him. I mean, he's dead, but I wish I could talk to him about that. Be like, why were you so focused on that? When especially, you know, being a Mormon man and your wife is living this traditional Mormon life. I don't know. So after I did not graduate, because my oldest sister for sure graduated. She graduated BYU like a good girl. And after I did not graduated, he then offered my two younger sisters $10,000 if they graduated college.
That's even more intense. What?
He didn't offer me that, so maybe I would have been a little bit more incentivized. But he was like, "Oh hell no, the rest of my daughters are going to graduate."
That's so interesting. Okay, and so you got on the track of having babies and just living out your trad-Mormon lifestyle, and similar path to me. I also got married at 19, and like I look back at like that being some of the happiest times of my life because I just feel like I was lobotomized because I just did what the church kind of told me to do, and everything was laid out and prescribed, and it was kind of just living the Mormon dream. So was that your experience, or how is it different than what you expected it to be? And like what kind of bumps in the road started to come up?
Yeah, definitely similar experience. I had my first when I just barely turned 22. And
so young. Wow.
My oldest is 19. I look at her and I'm like, if you fucking get married or get pregnant, I'm like, yeah, very, very young. Still living with my parents at the time.
The woman sitting across from me has a 19-year-old daughter. U.S. Natalie Dormer. What is going on?
Yes, Natalie, U.S. version. So yeah, it was, and then I got pregnant again pretty quickly. My two oldest are 19 months apart, and then had like a 3-year break. I had a couple miscarriages, and then had my two sons. My daughters are 23 months apart, and then my sons are 19 months apart. And so by the time I was 30, I had 4 kids. And
that is intense.
Yeah. It was hard as hell. Very much felt lobotomized. Like you just don't have enough time to breathe, let alone think for yourself. Especially when it's coupled with church callings and you are so busy. Like I did all the traditional housewife things. I managed the household. I cleaned it. I did the scheduling. The doctor's visits, vaccinations, like anything and everything, contact with schools, picking up, dropping off, grocery shopping, cooking, like all of the things that I thought were supposed to be motherhood when really that's not. And I think that's what made motherhood feel so difficult, because I feel like I was connecting it to so many other external things that are not actually technically a part of being a good mom. Because being a good mom is just about a good relationship with your kids and connections, just like fatherhood is, right?
Yeah.
No father would say, oh yeah, me being a good father means like, I make sure I'm cooking. You need to take care of your kids and
you're
stuff.
doing your gender role, basically.
Yes.
Like your gender role is
performing your gender role. And if you're not performing it to like the fullest extent, you feel like you're failing.
Sure.
And yeah, it was really, really hard. And I think I was, not that I didn't love my kids, I also dealt a lot with postpartum anxiety and depression, especially after my first and my last were born, especially my last. And I just couldn't understand why so many Mormon mothers seem so happy with being a mom. And like, I didn't hate it, but I struggled a lot. It was so hard. It's just really isolating.
And I think looking back, it feels similar to the temple or anything else where everyone says it's great.
Yes.
And then it's like, haha, locked in now. Can't get out.
Close. That's what I think of every time. You're like, oh my God, this is so amazing. And we're all dying inside. And I'm like, is it?
Yeah. And it's not that, like, I wish I didn't have kids or anything. I'm like, I didn't have the tools to be able, I mean, I had an undeveloped brain, I would put it that way. Like if I had my kids now, is more of a conscientious choice, things to be very different. But I think the tools that Mormonism gives and the expectations that they put on you at such a young age, when you don't really know yourself, it just feels like sometimes, I don't know, I'm trying to think of like an analogy of like swimming without a life vest, where like I can swim in the ocean for a while, but I would like a life vest, and the tools that Mormonism gives just is not quite developed enough.
What it is, and I will rant about this to anybody who will listen, and I have, is the pedestalization of motherhood within not even just the Mormon church, but as like a broader American society, but like especially within the Mormon church. Is this, I think this is why a lot of Mormon women struggle, is because you are put up so high on a pedestal. And so when I think of pedestalization, I think of a literal tiny little pedestal, like very small surface, but it's up very high off the ground. And you are trapped on this pedestal with words and phrases like, you are so perfect, you are already spiritually perfect, you are amazing, you are already so inherently nurturing, you're so inherently good, you're so meek and mild and humble, and God like brought you here to earth because men needed you, because men are dumb and doofuses and they can't take care of themselves, so they need women to basically keep them in line. And because women are so incredible and they are just so sweet and kind and giving and sacrificing, like I could go on and on. Mm-hmm. We've all heard this. And the problem with that is, as nice as that sounds, and maybe could sound like it would maybe give you a boost of confidence. Wow, I'm so amazing, incredible. It's harmful because it keeps you trapped in this box of perfection. You have to be perfect. And if you are not perfect, if you make one tiny little mistake, and mistake meaning, oh, I said a swear word in my head, or I got a little frustrated with my kids today, or I forgot to make dinner for this person in my ward, I forgot to do such and such. You do one tiny little human error and you slip a little bit off that pedestal and you fall, like it's going to hurt like a bitch. And that's why it's so harmful. And you put women in a box, they feel like they can't get out of it, and they can't complain, because if they complain, that means they're not grateful. That means they are denying this gift of spiritual, I don't know what's the word, like just spiritual hierarchy of though you don't have actual tangible power within the church, you just are inherently spiritually good and amazing. You are a queen, you are wonderful. And it just, you don't have any, it just feels like you have no actual power or authority to get out of this role, this box that they put you in.
Mm-hmm. And that's where it's calling me back to the AI thing of when you switch the gender roles. Yes. And I think of that great piece written by Alabest.
Yes, Amy McPhee.
Yeah. And I can link it down below because I want
Dear
everyone
Mormon
to listen
man.
to. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Do you want to explain a little bit about what that is? And
so she just flips everything. Yeah. So it's a great, fantastic essay about role reversals in the Mormon church. So instead of a woman having to listen to men, their male religious leaders, their male gods, it's a man coming home, complaining to his wife about his church calling, about how the women basically don't listen to him, and how the women in the scriptures, the women in his female church leaders, his female gods, like it just feels like there's no representation for him. And she just flips every single script, just reverses it from male to
sort
female.
Of like Elon Musk that they look up to, it's like Ellie Musk or
something like that. Yeah. Instead of like Joseph Smith, it's Josephina Smith. It's, Heavenly Mother. It's every male prophet. Instead it's a woman.
Yeah. And it's reading something like that, when you finally can kind of put yourself back in the teenage development. That's what I did when I read it. And I'm like, what would it have done to me to be able to know that my role isn't just within the confines of this box. So kind of like looking back at yourself, because I think we are both in such similar like I don't know, demographics of what decisions we made through our life and where we find ourselves now. So what kind of like healing or processes to people who are in that similar position do you have to like tell women who are going through this, or like what has that been like to recognize that your life could have been very different if you didn't have this conditioning? And like what's your kind of overall message to people who are in that, coming out of that and just realizing this like mind fuck of everything that's been drilled into them with their gender role through the church?
So bittersweet. I don't think that there's any other phrase that I can come up with that explains it better than that. I think especially I didn't really come to that reckoning until my own daughter turned 18, and she started living this life that I feel like I should have been able to live on some level. Not that I regret a lot of my life, but it was like this past. And I wrote a Substack about this. It was like she was like a living portal into a parallel universe in which Carly was not raised as a devout Mormon. And that I was free, not just free in like physically, like I could wear what I want, do what I want, but free in my mind and mentally, that I can think what I want. I can believe what I want. I am free to just explore my identity in a way that feels safe and, meaningful. And I'm watching her do this. And this is at the same time I turned 40, because our birthdays are around the same time. And yeah, I mean, looking back, it just feels really bittersweet, because it feels like on the one hand, I wouldn't have my kids now that I love so much. Had I not been raised Mormon. And then on the other hand, it's like, what could I have done with my life?
Mm-hmm. And that's what is a beautiful part to me about having daughters. If I had like all sons, it might be a different story, but being able to connect through a portal, that's a beautiful way to put it. So throughout this journey of raising your kids and living the ideal Mormon trad-wife life, some items on a person's shelf can't help but accumulate. So what were some of the experiences that you had, and some thoughts and different paradoxes or whatever fallacies that started to occur to you that started to accumulate to put cracks in your faith?
I don't really, I feel like at the time when I was very devout, I don't feel like I had anything on my shelf. I just never really thought about any of the inconsistencies. Like I said, I was so busy raising kids.
Yeah, which I want to just pause and talk about that for a second. That's the point, right? Like that is the point. That is to keep us so busy that we not only we don't have time to like read books and develop critical thinking skills, but also literally like we just are in this slip and slide in this water slide that's going this way, that you've already like made your bed, you have to lay in it now. Like the ideas about that's why they want kids to go to BYU. That's why they want people to be married young, so that you're just locked into this system. And so questioning really does cost you, you know, the potential marriage, potential career opportunities. Like you just don't have the space to question. So you were not able to really think critically up to this point. So then what happened?
Yeah. So like I said, I had 4 kids by the time I was 30. And after my 4th, I had really bad postpartum anxiety. So I was like, yeah, for sure, I'm done. I'm out of this like baby making business. But also at that same time, we moved from Southern California to Utah. So my daughter had just been my oldest daughter had just been baptized at 8. We moved for my ex-husband's job to Utah, and had never lived in Utah, like other than going to school there. I had never like lived there as a fully immersed citizen of the state. And I was so nervous about moving to Utah. I was like, no. That's where all like the weird Mormons are, right? Because I'm a California Mormon. We are the cool Mormons. No offense, Utah Mormons, but you know, it's true. Okay.
Anyway, it's actually true.
It's actually true. Thank you.
100% think that too.
Thank you. I was a cool Mormon, right?
If you live by the beach, you're a cool Mormon.
And so moved at the time when I was 30. And so this is back in 2014. And I, we get to know our ward. We bought a home in Sandy and still doing all the Mormon things, going every Sunday. And about 5 years into living in Utah, I was called into the primary presidency. I was the first or second counselor. I can't remember now. And I really loved primary. I just love the kids. The vibes are great. They're funny. It's fun. And this is about 2019. And then my husband had come to me and said, hey, I'm like concerned about some things that I'm learning about with church and church history. I'm reading some of the essays. Do you know about these essays? And his best friend at the time had left a year previously. And I knew that. I was a little nervous about that, but he was also trying to like save his soul at the time. Like they had many conversations and he's trying to bring him back to the fold, like any good Mormon would do, right?
Sure.
They care. And he comes to me early 2019 and said, I'm like struggling with some things. I might need to take a step back. And to my credit at the time, I thought, I did not freak out. I said, okay. I probably felt like I knew it was coming. But I also trusted him. He's a good person. He's an honest person. And so I was like, okay. I did, over the course of a few months, I did make a few snarky comments to his lack of faith maybe here and there. But also he never really pushed me to read anything or believe anything or do anything about my own testimony. He left me alone for the most part because he knows how I am. He knows that I am very defiant. So if you try to get me to do one thing, I'm going to want to do the opposite, which is not always the healthiest, but that is how I tend to be. And so he didn't push me to read anything until he did send me one podcast from RFM. And it
Radio
was
Free Mormon.
And it was him talking about a Mormon Land podcast with Stephen R. Snow. And we know the Snows. So we are from Southern California. We actually know a lot of like elite Mormons.
The Ward Radio guys. I mean,
yes, I know one of the main Ward Radio guys. Unfortunately.
It doesn't get much more elite than that.
Okay. But I also know like Kirby Hayborn. I took his family photos. Like we were in the same ward together and like, I don't know, just some other random people. I also know Jared Halverson. I know the Halversons. I was friends with his sister. Anyway. Okay. He sends me this podcast and Radio Free Mormon is basically like dissecting this interview with Stephen R. Snow in a way that just felt so satisfying to my brain because he is so methodical. He is very dry. He's very sarcastic. He's funny, but he just dismantles things.
And just to bring it back for the wider audience here, Stephen R. Snow, he helped
a former historian
of the LDS Church, and he oversaw writing the church essays. Is that what I remember?
I think so. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And that was what the podcast was about.
And I probably listened to the same one.
Yes.
And I also probably scratched my brain at the similar time. We both left the church in 2019 too. So we are deconstruction sisters. So RFM, who is also an attorney by trade.
Yes. And so I think that's why I connected with him so well, because he reminded me so much of my dad. And so my dad is the same way. And actually they were friends, by the way. And the way that he just laid it out, I was like, oh, this guy makes sense. And I was like, oh no.
And also let me stop you, because up to that point, listening to something from an ex-Mormon who is antagonizing somebody from the church who is a faithful member who's defending the faith in that way, like I was taught that person is obviously possessed by Satan. So did you have that kind of programming going in where you're like, all right, I'll hear them out just so that I can hear them speak on behalf of Satan, but I'm definitely not going to listen to this? Were you with like some of those walls coming down by that point? Because people need to understand that conditioning is so difficult deep. Because we're talking about probably the most obviously false religion in the world. And people are like, how did you not know? It's because you can be raised by a lawyer for a father, and you can have all Brilliant of the podcasts available to you, and still be like, I don't know, Joseph Smith needed to marry 14-year-olds apparently.
I don't want to learn more about this.
Yeah, so tell people about like that cognitive dissonance too, as you describe the story. But yes, keep going.
I am sure that I felt uncomfortable, and I know that I did, but I was also so curious. I think this part of my brain started to take over where I was like ravenous for actual knowledge. And at this time, my youngest was now around 4. So I had just been I'm coming out of this feeling like I'm drowning, raising babies. And I feel like I have a moment to breathe, to kind of catch my breath, and to start to actually think. And so he had sent me this podcast. I'm listening to it, and I'm like, he's being so sarcastic when he's talking about a church leader, but also he makes so much sense. And also he reminds me so much of my dad. And that probably is why it resonated so much and why I kept listening. And that was the only thing my ex had sent me. And it started me down this path of wanting to learn more about things on my terms. And I did not tell my ex-husband that I was doing this, even though like he was going down the same path at the same time. But I just wanted to learn for myself. Again, this is just how I am. I've done this with other things in my life. But he went away on a guy's trip with some ex-Mormon friends, which I was still nervous about at the time. And that's when I just took it upon myself. I was like, well, I'm just gonna dive in head first. And so I went on Ex-Mormon Reddit. I started listening to multiple Radio Free Mormon podcasts. I found Letter from My Wife. This was around August of 2019. And I would say I'm still in the primary presidency. And I would say within a matter of a few weeks, I went from fully devout to agnostic atheist. And what really cinched it for me was I had found Missed in Sunday School. You know that website? Amazing website. I don't know the guy's name that runs it or used to run it. All it is that he puts up these past quotes from church leaders, past prophets, and he categorizes them into labels like homophobia, misogyny, sexism, racism, and there's no commentary. It's just the quote, right? And I had found this on Ex-Mormon Reddit, and I'm reading these many quotes that are just abhorrent. I mean, they're horrible, really awful. And I'm like, what is going on here? Why are these so bad? And just filing it away in my brain. And then one day, around September, I think it was, Nelson was giving a talk at BYU Hawaii, and he, actually it was Radio Free Mormon podcast dissecting that talk. Okay. I'm still feel like I'm a believer at this point, but I decided to listen to Radio Free Mormon's podcast about this specific talk that Nelson is giving at BYU Hawaii. And in that talk, I remember I'm on a walk, and Nelson says, the prophets are really popular, but they always teach the truth. And that just undid everything.
Yeah.
It was like dominoes.
Yeah, they might not always be popular, but they will always teach the truth. And then all of these missing Sunday school things just come in. You're like, was it true when you said this? Was it true when you said this?
That's bullshit.
I can just see like a sassy Carly.
Yes. I was like, well, that's bullshit. I literally was like, well, that's a bunch of bullshit.
Yep.
And it was like, boom, 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 boom. Yeah. Everything. It was like, prophets, no. The church, Joseph Smith, no. Jesus, what? Oh no, existential despair. I was like crying every day in my car. I couldn't even go to the gym because I was like, what is life? What are we all doing here? What is this? What is the point? It was like deep, dark nihilism and nothing matters. We're all going to die. Terrible, like just spiral of despair.
All because Nelson, he just needs to shut up more.
He just needs to be quiet.
He is really, speaking of pedestalization, he pedestalizes.
Yeah.
I lost my faith over a stupid thing Nelson said too. When I remember where I was, the moment where he said that the Mormon saying the word Mormon is a win for Satan.
Oh,
And it was a slow
so
motion
dumb.
moment for me.
So dumb.
Because it's just stuff you don't need to say, bro.
You
Like,
don't need to, it's not really a thing that matters.
Just somebody have a council that make sure that nobody's going to lose their faith over stupid stuff like this, but they don't.
Yeah, it really was him.
Stuff like that, you know, people who are possibly really struggling with their faith, it just feels like the church doesn't care about them. They're speaking to just the most orthodox there, and, you know, calling people lazy learners. And if you're really going through a faith crisis and you know that that's not you, you're like, this prophet ain't for me now.
It ain't for me.
Yeah. So you mentioned some deep, dark, nihilistic dread. So what was kind of your unraveling like, and what are the conversations you and your ex had, or like, where did you turn? What did you do?
Yeah. So, I mean, I finally clued him in that I was reading all this, and he was like excited, and not like in a malicious way, like, oh yes, I want her to suffer existentially. But, you know, he had been going down this path by himself for a minute, and that's really lonely inside your marriage, and, or just in general. And I clued him in, and then we started researching together every single day. I mean, it's just, you cannot talk about anything else because it is mind blowing.
Right.
You're learning everything you believed and thought about your life is what feels like a lie to you. And it is just the most heartbreaking yet freeing thing you'll ever experience. And it is a full-blown identity crisis, like nothing else. And because he was a little further along, so he wasn't really going through like this existential dread that I was, but it was very quick for me. And I just felt like I was losing everything. Like, I really just felt like the rug was pulled out from under me. I was like, oh, I'm never going to see if my kids die, if something happens, I'm never going to see them again. I'm never going to see my siblings again. I'm never going to, there's no afterlife. Like, what do you mean there's no afterlife? I was like trying to grasp onto near-death experiences for a minute. And I was reading hundreds of near-death experience stories, just trying to gain footing somewhere. Like, oh, surely some parts of this must be true.
We had a little hiccup with the second half of Carly's interview, but we're jumping right back into it. It's actually going to be better than what we had previously recorded. Isn't it, Carly?
Yeah.
We just happen to be in different outfits now, and it's on a different day, but
it's totally fine.
We're back into the part 2 of Carly's interview seamlessly. This existential dread that so many of us go through, and reading near-death experiences, trying to find some kind of footing from this Mormon past and then making sense of it. So where did you go from there?
So I was reading a lot about near-death experiences. I was just trying to have some kind of foothold on some kind of belief that life continues on, that we're all going to see each other again after we die. It's going to be, you know, a Saturday's Warrior reunion. And I really needed to know something. I need to be certain about something. And so I just went online to like a bunch of different forums and was reading a lot about near-death experiences, about a few books, and kind of went down that rabbit hole a little bit. Well, actually a lot bit. And it did give me a lot of comfort at the time. And then as I'm reading them, a lot of these experiences, like we're talking about, I mean, these are people from all over the world, and all different beliefs, all different faiths, and they would all see, like have similar feelings of love and joy and peace, but they would see their religious figures, like their personal religious figures that they grew up with, that they were familiar with. So it wasn't like it wasn't Jesus, it wasn't Buddha, it just wasn't one thing, common figure. It was all sorts of things. So that was like, maybe life is just, you know, it all matters and none of it matters, right? And as I'm reading more, I'm thinking, well, maybe maybe this isn't, maybe this is just something our brain does. And I'm deconstructing that too at the same time. But there did come a moment where I was so overwhelmed with everything that I thought I knew, everything that I didn't know. And I remember I don't know if you want to call it meditating prayer or whatever, but it was just, I'm going back to my roots and just thinking like, I just need to feel okay. Is this okay that I don't believe this? And I'm thinking that to myself or to the universe, whatever. And I just get this overwhelming sense of peace, right? It feels like the spirit. That's what I would have called it at the time before. And basically saying, it's okay if you don't believe this. Like, just love people. That's all that matters. And I just kind of released all of that dread, and it came on quickly and it was over quickly. And ever since then, I don't really think much about an afterlife or what is beyond this life, because it just seems to me that nobody knows. In my opinion, nobody knows. So why waste so much precious time trying to know? And so now I would call myself like an atheist, right? I don't care if there's a God, and I don't care to know. Like, I don't care to try to figure that out, because that seems like an impossible task.
Mm-hmm. For anyone to really know and have a coherent state of what this reality is, because it's just subjective to each of us.
Yeah, 100%.
So then is this something that you were able to share with your ex-husband and like get on the same page and decide how you were going to talk to your kids? Like, where'd you go from there?
Yeah. So we did talk about it, and it all kind of blurs together now, but we had so many conversations, and we decided, okay, we're gonna maybe still go to church, because I wanted to still go maybe for the community. I think a lot of us try to take that step because the community is important to us. These are our people, right? And a sense of community and purpose is important to have, like a happy life, a content life. And it was important for my kids. And living in Utah, a lot of your neighbors are Mormon. And so I didn't want to just throw everything away immediately. But I realized, I can't do this, because my kids are going to hear at church that they are on some level broken and not worthy as they are. Mm-hmm. And I knew in my heart that it did not make sense to have a middleman for them to know their worth, just as who they are as human beings. And Jesus, great dude, I'm sure. But I don't need him. I don't need him to be a middleman to teach my kids that they are loved and worthy as they are. So my husband and I talked about it and said, okay, after the primary program, we're going to stop going. And, we just told our kids straight up and said, hey, Dad and I kind of don't believe this anymore. My oldest was 12 at the time, and we're going to be drinking coffee. There's going to be a few minor changes here and there. And my oldest was shocked, and I think she was more aware of the beliefs and how important this was in her life and our lives. And I think it was overwhelming for her. And I look back now and I regret how I handled that with her personally, because we just stopped going altogether. But we told our kids, hey, if you still want to go, you can go. And this is your life. Like, you have the choice. We're not going to force you to not go. We're not going to force you to go. And she did continue to go for a while, but I should have gone with her. I should have made more of an effort to go with her to church and sit there. But I think I was so in my own head about how hard this was for me. And I wasn't thinking outside of myself more. I should have been, about my kids and how this was affecting her. And I've apologized to her so many times for that. I said, I'm so sorry that I didn't continue to go with you, because she went with her friends. Like, she would get picked up and dropped off, or I would drop her off, pick her up. I think because it was just awkward to sit there with board members because I had come out like publicly on my personal social media. And so everybody knew. And so I just felt, oh, now I'm like an outcast, but I still want my daughter there. And now they're going to look at her and feel bad for her, look down on me. And anyway, so, but it took her maybe a good year or so for her to realize like, this ain't for me. So yeah.
And your other kids that had been baptized, they all had to make their own decisions and go through something similar, I'm guessing. Julia, who from Analyzing Mormonism, is actually helping with my production behind the scenes now, especially after the last screw up that my audio got left behind, you could say. So Julia is helping out in the chat, and we love her so much. And another good reason to donate to the podcast so that I can pay Julia and we can have this female dream team going on here. But Julia wanted to ask, isn't it scary not knowing? I mean, there's the whole obvious reasons why religion was invented, the shared myth, this ability to have a good footing of what to teach your kids. I'm a mom too. I wish that there was more that I could tell my kids. So was it scary not knowing? Was it scary telling your kids, like, I'm your mom and I don't know what the answer is here of what's there after this life?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It is completely terrifying. And I, that's why I started my Instagram page called Uncertainly Carly, because I was so uncertain and still am about most things. And yeah, it was, I think when you are raised to know answers to life's big questions, you feel really secure, and maybe on some level that provides a lot of confidence. But at the same time, now having raised kids, still raising kids, that it is normal, developmentally normal at around ages 6 through 9, 10 to question death, to question the meaning of an afterlife, heaven, what happens when you die. It is so normal. And kids ask these questions. But when they feel like they already have answers, or they do not feel safe to answer or ask these questions to their parents or to their caregivers, they don't ask. And they might be thinking about them, but they're not asking because they're like, well, what's the point? Because we already have an answer. But my boys, who were at the time when we left 7 and 4, went through that, went through existential dread, went through questioning death, worried about death. And they would ask many times, and it would be many conversations, and they would say, well, Mom, what does happen when we die? And I remember my 7-year-old at the time, when we left, because we left so quickly, we didn't want him baptized. We're like, okay, we're out before he has to get baptized. And he is very, very smart, and he's a high level thinker, and he thinks very deeply about a lot of things. And I remember putting him to bed one night shortly after we told them that we didn't really believe this. And he said, and he started just one by one asking all of these questions he had been thinking about. He said, Mom, what do you think happens when we die? Do you think heaven is real? Do you think pets go to heaven? If heaven is real, like, do we get to look down upon like the people that we know after we die? Mom, I don't know if God is real. I think he's made up to make people behave. He said this to me, dead ass. And I'm just like, yeah. And I, for the first time, told him, yeah, I don't know the answers to these questions. I said, and that's okay. And a lot of people don't know. Nobody knows the answers to these questions, but I am so glad you're asking. And I think it's really important to stay curious and talk to different people about what they believe. Hey, what do you believe happens? And what do you think this means? And to ask people about their different beliefs. And one day, maybe you can land on something that feels solid for you, and you can decide if that brings you peace and meaning. And he's like, yeah, I don't know if I've really ever believed in God. And he's 7, and I'm like, wow, I just came to this conclusion at 35, and you're 7. And same goes for my 4 at the 4-year-old at the time, a couple years later, he would ask me the same questions. Mom, like, what happens when you die? Like, I'm scared of dying. I don't want to die. And I was like, yeah, buddy, I don't know. And he had to go to therapy a little bit for that, for some existential dread and death anxiety. And he worked through that. And I think a lot of us are not given that opportunity to work through that at the age that we are supposed to. And so as
That's
adults,
a good point. Yeah.
When we're going through that, we're like, holy shit, I have made so many decisions based on this belief. And now not only do I have to work through this existential dread, but now I have to question, okay, my marriage, the decision that I made possibly to have kids, where I lived, when I got married, literally everything.
Mm-hmm.
So on top of all that, you're now questioning every decision that you've ever made about your life. And it's a lot. It's really overwhelming.
Right. And I'm sure you get the same question that I get a lot, and I'm going to pose it to you right now. I'm going to put you on the spot. So I think it's a perfect segue from what you just said. The question is, why do so many ex-Mormons get divorced?
That's a great question. And I think it's complicated, and I certainly can't speak for all ex-Mormons. I think we tend to put people, think of groups of people as a monolith, that we all think the same, do the same, because as Mormons, we do that, right? And ex-Mormons are all different. They're all from all different walks of life. For me personally, and maybe for a few of my friends, when you make the decision to get married, especially when you marry really young, and the basis of the foundation, so to speak, of your relationship is the church or religion, and then you're making all of these other decisions based off that foundation. When you, years later, maybe decades later, come to realize, oh, this foundation I actually have has disappeared. Now we are treading water. We don't actually have a foundation. What do we actually believe? What do we actually know? You're just taking things down, and tearing everything down one by one. And for some people, for some ex-Mormons, that includes marriage, which is also an institution, man-made institution, based off this belief that you marry for time and all eternity. And this is a pinnacle moment. Like, this is like the apex that you need to reach in order to get to God, right? Is marriage in the temple specifically. Then when you realize that is not true for me, you're like, okay, what do we have now? What do we have now that is the foundation of our relationship? Is it friendship? Is it romance? Is it attraction? Is it mutual respect? Is it all of the above? Is it none of the above? And for some, that's a huge process, and it takes a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And if you marry for one reason, for one main reason, and then later you realize that reason is not what it seemed to be, yeah, it seems pretty natural that you're going to start to question these decisions that you made, these huge, huge decisions. And one of them being married. Should we stay married? Is this enough to sustain our relationship? And for some, it's not.
Yeah, I think you're dead on that. And it's so obvious coming from people like you and me, where like there's all this context that comes in, and then there's outsiders, and their first reaction was like, of course, ex-Mormons. That's right. Like the most obvious thing in the world. Like, not surprised.
I will always remember Lindsay Hansen Park. We were at an event, Lost and Found Club event, that she was speaking at, and she said, of course your life is going to fall apart when you leave the church, because your life was built around it. It's supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
And I will never forget that, because I'm like, well, duh. Yeah, of course. Of course, from outside perspective, or from the Mormon perspective, it's going to seem like your life is falling apart. Well, yeah, of course. Ex-Mormons get divorced because blah, blah, blah. To them, it seems like a negative thing. But for many, that's a positive thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you've decided, oh, this doesn't work for me. This doesn't work for us. Let's move on. And yeah, if your life is built on this scaffolding, and all of a sudden the scaffolding has disappeared, yeah, it's going to tumble, it's going to fall, and you have to rebuild in different ways, and it's going to look different. That's okay.
Yeah. So don't be judgmental, because you don't walk in everybody else's shoes, guys.
No.
So divorce is hard. Like, living apart from the person you built your life with is excruciatingly painful. And until you have to go through it, I don't wish it on anyone. You know, it's like sometimes the biggest, baddest, most awesome people do it. Bingo, over sitting across from me. So if you had to tell your just left the church self one big thing, it's what I like to do. I like to think of future Kara shouting things into my past self all the time of what would you tell yourself right after this existential things that you're going through, you're realizing the church isn't true. What's one thing where you're like, you're going to learn this lesson later on. Better if you learn it now. What's one thing you'd want to tell your old self?
I don't know if I would tell her anything specific. I'm not someone who looks back on my life with a lot of regret, or I wish I would have done this differently. It's because it is what it is, and it's
part of your hero's journey.
I am the person that I am because of what I went through. I would just say, hey, you don't need to stress so much. It's going to be okay. This uncertainty, this anxiety that you have, it's kind of a waste of time. Just take it day by day, hour by hour if you need to. It's going to work out. You're going to be okay. That's pretty much what I would say to her.
Yeah. And I like to live in that moment. When I found out that the second half of this interview was gone, I said to myself, eventually I am going through the grief cycle right now. I'm going to come to acceptance. And I was like, Carrie, just get to the acceptance right now. Get to it fast. And I was like, just tell Carly that it all got erased and just get to acceptance right now. All right. No stress. Everything will work out.
It will work out.
It's fine. It's fine. So similar to the last question, but different. Take as much time on this as you want. Okay. Flatter yourself if you need to.
Okay.
I love a good Carly rant.
All right.
What do you know about yourself now? About who you are, your likes, your dislikes, your strength. What do you know about yourself now that you didn't know going through your faith crisis?
Holy shit, that's a big question. There's a lot that I've learned about myself, especially going through divorce, as a strength and probably as a weakness, depending on how I'm using it in my life. I am someone who is okay with uncertainty, and I am someone who loves to know why behind things. I love to know whys behind questions and feelings. And that makes me really great at logic and rationale and analytical reasoning. But I also suppress a lot of emotions due to my upbringing, maybe due to Mormonism, that I have a hard time feeling or knowing when I'm feeling, because I'm constantly intellectualizing my feelings. So that was detrimental to my marriage. And I am extremely independent, and I realized I needed to know what it was like to be on my own, because I never had that. I probably said earlier, I went from being a mother to my siblings, not a total complete mother. My mother would disagree about that, but mothering my siblings to mothering my children. And I never had an experience where I got to be on my own. I want to know what that's like. I want to live a life of my choosing, and that I just, man, that's such a hard question. I'm thinking, okay, what else have I learned about myself? What else do I know about myself? I can seem confident, and I am confident in a lot of ways, but part of that is a is a wall of protection. That I am very wary of getting too close emotionally to people, because if I open up emotionally to people and they reject me, that feels like abandonment. And I learned that like through my divorce. And it's very, I think that's why social media feels so comfortable for me, because I can connect with people on a level that feels safe. Because if I'm sharing something online and they don't like it and they unfollow, no skin off my back. I don't care. Like, I'm not emotionally connected to these people. So I can receive little bits of validation here and there. And that's enough to sustain my confidence, my whatever you want to call it. So again, that can be a strength and a weakness. And but yeah, I've just learned that I'm okay with not knowing. A lot of people aren't. I don't know why I feel okay about that, but I think it's just my personality. But I don't know.
So you
think
mentioned,
I'm still learning.
Yeah. Like with feeling okay with uncertainty in terms of like tools, not just having a social media presence and putting your thoughts out there, in terms of like tools when you are feeling like, you know, there was an operating system there that gave you the answers and now it's not there anymore. Do you feel like you have found tools to help you like regulate and soothe and fulfill that part that religion had before? Or is that just still kind of like an ongoing journey? Or is there anything you would like share with people who are new on this ex-Mormon journey that you're like, this is a tip for how I soothe myself through these triggers and these new avenues?
Yeah. All of the things that religion brings to people that many members of said religion would say it's exclusive to that religion are things like what? It's purpose, a sense of identity, community, a sense of hope. Those are all still important, whether you believe in God or not, whether you go to church or not. But it's not exclusive to religion. That's important. So those are the tools. I guess those are the tenets, the pillars of living a life that feels meaningful. And so as far as the tools for myself, what I use, I would say it was reaching out, making friends, and really putting myself out there. For a while, I really did not, I lost a lot of friends. I didn't feel like I had a good circle of friends for maybe a couple years. It is so hard to make friends when you are not given them as a ward member, because you're dropped into a ward, you move to a ward and like, oh, hey, these people are on your ward list, make friends with them. All right. You get to be in callings with them. It's pretty easy, right? When you don't have that structure, now suddenly it's on you. And now you're an adult having to make friends for like the first time, legitimately, authentically.
Should Lost and Found Club have visiting teaching assignments?
Maybe.
We need to assign friendships.
Just little check-ins. That was the most important thing that I did. So I joined a ton of Facebook groups.
Good.
That's when I met Chelsea Homer. I don't know if I said that last time, but then I was kind of along for the ride when she started Lost and Found Club. I met a lot of friends through her, through some other mutual friends, and started to slowly grow my circle of friends. And that's huge. You really need people in your life around you that get you, that understand you, and it has to feel authentic. It has to feel genuine, and not that they are obligated to hang out with you. And the other is, okay, what is my purpose? For me, that is my kids still. And yeah, having kids does bring you purpose, but also your kids are going to grow up. So you have to find other things that bring you purpose. So, okay, my job, career, social media content, what do I like doing? What makes me happy? What is fun for me? What brings me joy? And it's only been in the past year or so that I've really started to dig into that. And, you know, starting my Substack, trying to monetize more, because I really don't monetize my social media, and be like, okay, maybe I can actually make this financially sustainable, and make it make sense financially. And we're still working on relationships, and really, really leaning into the relationships that bring me a lot of peace and happiness. And those are my good friends, and, you know, your significant others, whoever you might be dating or seeing, and not being afraid to say, I love you, like, regardless of who it is. I love you. I'm so grateful that you're in my life. Because, you know, for me, I'm thinking, I don't think there's anything after this life. And so for myself, that makes life more precious. And so it's given me an opportunity to be more emotionally available, to open up more emotionally and say, hey, I appreciate you so much. And thank you so much for being my friend. And then, you know, community, again, Lost and Found Club, just even like knowing your neighbors, even just saying hi to like people at the gym, like those pro-social relationships are also really important, even if you don't know their names. And hope. And so what do I do? What brings me hope? It's, you know, knowing that I am doing the best I can as a mother, and that I want my kids to live a life that feels authentic to them. And that brings me a lot of hope, seeing them grow and seeing them, you know, navigate life through all its challenges and joys, and knowing that, like, hey, we're all here. Like, this is all our first time being here. We're all doing the best we can. And don't be a dick. Do the best you can. And still trying to find, still working on tools, and knowing what works for me, what doesn't. And knowing that just because something works for me, it doesn't mean it has to work for somebody else.
But that was a great summary of so many of the things that our kind of human soul is longing after in this life, and what it means to leave the church and then find your own identity, and then just build a life that reflects your values from a really authentic place. I think a big piece of what you said has a lot to do with finding your autonomy as a post-Mormon woman, after everything you've been through as a trad wife. And in the similar fashion, when you are on an airplane and they say to put your oxygen mask on first before helping somebody else, I think a key piece of that is the autonomy that it takes. And a lot of people don't even know where to start. And you wrote a really great Substack article, and that I wanted you to talk more about, just kind of like getting your financials in order, getting your business in order, whether you plan on getting divorced, whether you don't. Just I would recommend, you know, before you even read that article and you made a TikTok about it, I was like, this is exactly what I wish somebody would have told me from the beginning of my marriage all throughout. I think the feedback has been that it's been very useful for other people. So,
yeah. So going through this process of divorce, which the process of divorce sucks ass. Being divorced is great. And I think a lot of people would agree. But going through the process of divorce, I learned a lot of things, some of which I already knew beforehand, but just seemed much more apparent going through it, especially as a woman who stayed home and raised kids for 18 years of her life. And what I learned, and I just thought, okay, I need to write something about this. I need more women to know this, especially women who have been in my position, who are in my position, that if they are to get divorced, or if your husband dies, you need to have autonomy, financial autonomy. You need to have, you know, emotional autonomy, and all the autonomies, all of them. So I just laid out a bunch of steps in this article about what you should have what you should have already in your marriage, whether you are planning on getting divorced, not getting divorced, if your husband dies, if he's fine, like, regardless, you need to have your own bank account. with your own name, just your name only. You need to have a credit card in your name only. You need to be checking your credit report every single month. You need to have some sort of income coming into that separate account, whether that's your husband giving you money to put in that account, setting that aside for whatever you need in the future, or some kind of side hustle or whatever you can do to bring some money into that account. Your credit cards, you need to know, okay, if I got a divorce, what does it mean to hire a lawyer? What does that process look like? How much is it to hire a lawyer? And I know a little bit about lawyers because I work for lawyers as a bookkeeper, and my dad was a lawyer, my brother's a lawyer. So I'm in that world a little bit. And then, especially going through divorce, I was like, oh, now I kind of know on another level how lawyers operate, especially family law lawyers. And so I put a lot of that advice in there. Okay, you need to hire a lawyer, like if you're getting a divorce, 100%. A lot of people think they can be amicable, but emotions run very high. Divorce is, I think, the second most stressful life event under the death of a spouse. So yeah, hiring a lawyer, knowing that when you're talking to lawyers, they are charging for every single second that they're talking to you. Those are called billable fees. Understanding when they might be exploiting you financially, dragging things out unnecessarily. Just it was a lot of logistical advice. That particular article, I didn't really go into any personal details, but just saying, here's what I wish I knew. And also knowing about the finances in your marriage. That is huge, huge, huge. I thankfully ran all of the finances in my own marriage. I managed everything. I managed paying the bills. I just wasn't earning the income. But I handled everything. I paid all the bills, the mortgage. I knew all the credit cards that we had. I knew how much debt we had, what our assets were. I knew all the retirement accounts, everything. So if you are a woman, you are not the primary breadwinner, and you don't know how the finances work in your marriage, you got to fix one or both. Yeah. But especially you have to know the finances in your marriage. You have to know how they run.
And be nice to yourself and make sure other people are nice to you too. Because my sisters, I love them, but they're sometimes a little bit strong-armed about the fact that I was a teenage Mormon bride. It was my fault. I'm I'm just learning how to adult now for the first time, guys. So be nice to yourself. No, this is a stressful thing for anyone to do. So,
yeah. And I made sure I laid it out in a way that wasn't, questioning the intelligence of the reader. Hey, I trust you that you are an adult, that you can figure this out. And also it's overwhelming and confusing. So I put links, I put lots of suggestions, advice in there. But it is really important to know the passwords, all the accounts, all the retirement accounts, every single account. You have to know all of that. You ask your husband for a spreadsheet, Google Docs, whatever, and he's updating it regularly if he changes the passwords.
Yeah.
That you are aware, because if God forbid he dies, and especially that seemed really important too, especially when my own dad died, and watching my mom go through this and having to send in death certificates to each financial institution. Hey, he's dead. I need access to this account. This is my money. I'm the beneficiary. And it was a huge pain in the ass. And when you're already dealing with the death of a loved one, the last thing you want to do is feeling like you're unprepared for the financial fallback of that.
Yeah. It's a really smart thing to do. And I wanted to ask some questions relating to your dad now that you brought that up. So you mentioned that your dad is a really intelligent lawyer that worked for the church at some point. And are you comfortable talking about your dad and sometimes people will ask, really intelligent people, how did they have such a strong testimony?
Mm-hmm.
For one, was he ever like an apologist for the church in that capacity? And what kind of faith did he have? Because sometimes people look at really intelligent people and they're like, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
How do you think that your dad made sense of the church?
Well, let's get one thing out of the way. Faith in anything is not about intelligence. And I know you know that, but I think a lot of people are like, how can they be so stupid? It's not about intelligence. It's about so much more than that. The smartest people in the world believe what seems like to be some pretty crazy things. So it's not about whether you're smart or dumb. It's so much more. And I think for my dad, a lot of that was an emotional tie to the church. Because when he was really young, probably around 5 years old, his dad died and his mom was a widow with 4 young kids. And the person that took them in and made sure that she was okay financially and had some stability was Joseph B. Wirthlin. And he really helped their family a lot. And he was their bishop at the time. And I think that my dad really held on to that as the reason why their family survived. It was because of the church, because of church leaders. And he really had a lot of love for Joseph B. Wirthlin and talked about him fondly all the time. And
for those who don't know, who is Joseph B. Wirthlin?
He was a prophet of the church back in the 90s, before Hinckley, right?
Wirthlin?
Wirthlin. Joseph B. Wirthlin? Wasn't he a prophet, right?
I would know if there was a prophet named Wirthlin, wouldn't I?
Wirthlin. Joseph B. Wirthlin.
Julia, fact check. Apostle. You said prophet.
Was he an apostle?
Apostle, yeah.
Oh, he was an apostle, not a prophet. Okay.
I was like, I think I would have known that in the song.
No, you're right. That's right. Okay, he was an apostle.
Okay,
Man, I'm already forgetting.
Prophets here and revelators, how they're set apart. So we're both
Latter-day prophets are number one. No, Joseph B. Wirthlin in there. I don't think so. I'm so sorry. That's
Julia with the fact check in real time. I love this.
That's a hit to my
donate to the podcast so I can pay for this fact checker.
Okay.
So he was
an apostle.
Apostle. They were good friends. Go on.
Okay, so yes, my dad is very brilliant. So I mentioned earlier, he knew everything there was to know about church history. Any book about church history, any book, no matter how old or new, every single journal from every single prophet, apostle, doesn't matter how abstract or random it was just, he knew it all. He read every single book, and brilliant, just incredibly brilliant. And I always say he was an enigma. He held his beliefs close to his chest. He would say one thing and then say another to somebody else, depending on who the audience was. So it's really hard to tell what he actually believed. He was, towards the end of his life, good friends with Radio Free Mormon, because Radio Free Mormon is a lawyer, and I think they really vibed in that way, and similar senses of humor. And he even helped Radio Free Mormon in his debate with Cardinal Ellis and the Three Stooges.
Oh, with the Word Radio guys.
Yeah.
Oh,
with the vests.
Yeah. Which is funny because this episode is going to come out before my Quaco episode where we talk about that.
Oh, yes.
So stay tuned. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. This is Carly's episode. We'll be referencing the same event. Quaco's episode will be coming out a week later. That's a big deal. That was kind of an interesting time in Mormon ex-Mormon relations.
Very interesting.
Which Quaco still said that he stands by, and he thinks this was very funny to do. I have some pushback to that. But it was 3 Mormon apologists against 1 ex-Mormon lawyer, RFM. And what do you mean your dad helped?
He helped Radio Free Mormon prepare for that debate, especially in regards to polygamy, because my dad was well versed in polygamy and the history of it.
A faithful Mormon, tithe paying,
like
temple recommend holding, garment wearing, former bishop, former lawyer for the church, helping an ex-Mormon podcaster. What was his motivation? Is he trying to go to hell before he died? What?
He said, and I quote, "I want you to wipe the floor with them." because he could not stand one of them in particularly. So
I wonder which one.
Knowing him well, having been in his ward, knows him well,
Wow.
could not stand him. Said, I want you to wipe the floor with them. So I'm going to help you. And so on the one hand, he was an apologist. Like, he was a prolific poster in online discussion forums. So after he died, I found all of like his usernames and posts, and it would be like Mormon discussions, Mormon dialogue, those the forums that anything not Reddit, Ex-Mormon Reddit, all the other forums, he was on there, debating and being his, cynical, sarcastic, very brash self. It's just that, and a lot of people loved and hated him in those forums, I came to understand. But what I also learned is that he brought a very high level thinking to these debates and these online forums, because he knew what he was talking about, whether he was trying to be an apologist or not being an apologist. Like, you never knew what side he was going to come out for. And that's what I think made him so interesting, is that, these are the facts, and you don't have to like the facts, but these are the facts. Like, this is the logic. Like, doesn't matter if you don't like it. Like, this is actually the history.
I'm curious if you can remember. If you can't, that's fine. Is there a particular subject, like you mentioned polygamy, is there a particular subject or opinion that he had that would shock, most Mormons, to say that like another fellow Mormon, somewhat apologist, where he's kind of playing both sides of the fence? Was there one opinion that shocked you that he had that you couldn't believe that he would express online?
I'm trying to remember the things that he would speak about, because sometimes he would be speaking as his lawyer self for the church. Sometimes he'd be speaking as just himself. I think he couldn't stand the fact that churches don't pay taxes. I think he said that a few times, that shouldn't be the case. Taxpayer should not be subsidizing churches and religions. He did have some thoughts about polygamy, that it was really messy and nobody knew what they were doing. And I'm thinking back now on the things that he would talk about. Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe this will help you, because I saw a TikTok that you made where sometimes you'll come across your dad's name on Ex-Mormon Reddit.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes you will see people be like, oh, this guy's a piece of shit. And then they're like, he's dead. And people are like, good, I'm glad he's dead. And that must feel like very intense for you to read that about your own father. But then at the same time, you're like, yeah, he did say some shitty things. And people are like, I'm going to go take a shit on his grave. And you're like, he would think that's hilarious.
Yes.
What makes you say that?
Yes. Okay. So I made that TikTok, I think over a year ago, but I just said, hey, my dad was a lawyer from the Mormon church. And I was like, do I really want to talk about this? And I was like, okay, he's dead, so it's fine. So he was a lawyer, and part of his practice was defending the church in some abuse cases, which I know everybody cringe, everybody swear. Yes, I know. Damn him to hell. I know. But I was scrolling Ex-Mormon Reddit one day, and I came across this post, and it had my dad's name on it. And I was like, oh no. So I click on it, and I'm reading it. And it was back when he was working for the firm that he worked at for most of his life until he started his own practice. And I think this was in the 90s, and it was about clergy not having to have background checks, or church leaders not having to have background checks, right? So, and he had signed this order, or whatever, the brief, stating that it's not a requirement. Like, this is basically laying out the legal framework. This is the law. The law does not require that church leaders have to have background checks. And yeah, that sounds horrible. So this is why it's like, yeah, everybody hates a lawyer until you need one. Yeah, it sounds unethical, and yeah, it's unethical and immoral, and it feels icky, but that was the law, and he was doing his job, and he was doing a damn good job of it, as much as I hate to say it. So you don't have to like the law, but it is the law, and that was the law at the time. So he's like, that was the defense, and he was right. So I'm reading the comments, and people are like, F this guy. I hope he's dead. Like, I hope he's rotting, or just saying like, just really, really horrible things. And like, I get it. Because if you don't know this person, you're like, wow, this person doesn't care about protecting children. Like, on the surface, 100%, that's what it seems like. Totally get it. And I'm reading the comments. It's like, wow, wherever this guy is, he's the worst. F him. And then someone comments, oh, he's dead. And then someone comments, good. And then another comment's like, well, he died of cancer. Good. I hope he suffered. I hope it was painful. And then another person was like, I want to go shit on his grave. And I'm just like, okay, like, all right. And so I made a TikTok, and I was like, yep, this is my dad, and this is what I read. And it was very, very jarring. And now I understand that if you're coming across these posts and you are the child or a sibling or really closely related to someone that they're talking about in this way, there's a lot of things going through your head. Like, I get why they're so angry. And also, he was so much more complicated than that. People are not all good or all bad. And at the very end, I said, so DM me and I'll send you the address to his grave so you can shit on it, because he would think that's hilarious. And he actually would. He lived for that.
That's an incredible story. That's an incredible way to think of things. That's quite the Nuancehoe perspective too. Things are multifaceted, right? It kind of reminds me. So one of the first times that I had to deal with that, this interview is about Carly, but I would like to add that I come from a family that has some white supremacists in it that were at January 6th. Trust me, I get some nuance there. So my oldest brother was arrested for doing some white supremacy things. Even before Trump. This was like 10, 15 years ago, maybe. And there's a bunch of newspaper articles about him. And I had to read the comment section to see what people are saying about my family. And at the time I was Mormon, didn't make a difference. But the comment section were people saying stuff like, well, that must mean that he was raised in a white supremacist family. And I didn't think of my parents as bad people, as people would ever espouse white supremacy. They're just like normal Mormon parents, right? But everyone's like, no, this is the only way. And I was like, he's also autistic and he's deaf and he's like, his best friend's been online chat forums his entire life, and having to hear or having to read people say really despicable things about your family, but also wanting to defend them. But at the same time, like, it is what it is. It just is what it is. There's a lot of nuance. And I had to realize personally that, like, could my parents been better anti-racist or something? Yeah, there's a lot that they could have done. But when people come across somebody in your family that you're close to and just can say the most wild things about them, like, it still hurts. Like, did it still hurt?
Yeah, it
like to get it so wrong, but you can never really explain it.
It hurt more in the sense that I'm like, oh, I just need to explain. Like, I just need to explain that, like, no, he's not all this one person. But I'm like, there's no point. Like, what good is that going to do? I know what kind of person he was. I know the things that he did quietly behind the scenes. And I'm like, people need to get their rage out. My dad's dead. What's it going to do now? Like, let them be mad at him.
Julia had a good question in the chat. She said, did this change, so Carly, did this change your view of Mormon leaders, that like them being all good or all bad, and the complexities that we could also rage against a lot of the apostles and prophets, but they're close family members that, they might be ex-Mormon and be like, also they do good things here. Yeah. Like, does that change your view of other Mormon leaders?
Yeah, honestly, it did quite a bit. Especially because before my dad died, he was very close, like worked closely with a lot of church leaders and met with them on occasion, here and there throughout the years. And he said to me, or he said, actually, I think on a podcast to Radio Free Mormon, these guys are just used car salesmen. They don't actually know a lot of things. They are not really that well read in Mormon church history.
Mm-hmm.
They are just selling a product.
Mm-hmm.
They are doing their jobs.
They do it really poorly. I mean,
yeah. So, yeah, they are very wealthy, privileged men. And also they are incredibly insulated from the outside world. You know, they probably have interns, employees running their social media accounts. They're not really meeting with the people, right? As Jesus would have. They're not out there knowing what everyday people are going through. So it's a lot of ignorance, a lot of it willful ignorance. And they're essentially they're doing their job. And I'm sure they do a lot of good. And it can seem like they're doing a lot of harm at the same time. So I did change my perspective quite a bit. I do get annoyed with them from time to time. I get when I think too much about what they do or don't do. But yeah, it's just people are complicated and complex, and it's just how we are.
So interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Fascinating. So speaking of fuck that guy, let's talk about sex and relationships now for a second.
I thought you were going to say Tim Ballard for a second. I was like, yeah, fuck that guy.
Yeah. We need to do an entire, me and Carly are both obsessed with Tim Ballard. So definitely get to that. Yeah. Only one of us has started an entire podcast.
You're on another level.
Yeah. So speaking of fuck that guy, I wanted to ask about, during our deconstruction, our view as women in this church about our relationship to men, to our husband, our gender roles, our role to show up in the bedroom. So much of it is such a blueprint that's already laid out for us. So I just kind of wanted you to talk about what was that blueprint of your understanding going into marriage? And then is there any particular moment where you feel like you went off the given blueprint where, for example, I remember it was a very clear time when I was still very Mormon. And it was like, if I left the church in 2019, this was like 2017, I remember telling Aaron, I think we should swear during sex now. I think that that's a thing we should be allowed to do. And he's like, fine by me. I'm like, I'm sick of saying these in my head. Let's just say them out loud.
You naughty girl.
And once you take a little bit back of that, autonomy, it's really just, a water slide, figuratively and literally down to hell from there. So just wanted you to talk about kind of that blueprint you were giving, what your expectations were, and then what ways that you took back some of that power for yourself and maybe did things that a good Mormon girl wouldn't do.
I think my blueprint was a pretty standard Mormon one where I felt, not that my husband ever told me this explicitly, not that it was even felt like it was explicitly taught to me in a sense, but that I was there to serve his needs sexually. So he doesn't go looking at porn. And also to serve as a uterus for the family, to bring about the spirits into the world, right?
I like the idea of a uterus just being a lazy Susan on the table.
Disembodied uterus, right? It's just a tool, right? Just
the uterus of the family. We only need one, unless you're polygamous. Go on.
For a long time in my marriage, again, this is not about my ex, what he thought or told me specifically, or even that he felt this way. This is just me internalizing things. So much of my life, I felt like a utility rather than a whole person. And what I mean by that is that my body was just a tool to serve in some capacity, whether that was in the bedroom, meeting my kids' needs, being pregnant, birthing children, nursing children, doing the tasks, the constant tasks that it takes to raise and care for children, cleaning, cooking, grocery shopping. You feel really robotic. You feel really disengaged with your body, disassociated from it, because you're like, I am not a person. I am I am just doing what I'm supposed to be doing because I have to like raise these kids. I got to meet this goal of making sure they are good people. They make it to the celestial kingdom, whatever. And then in your calling, like you're serving in your callings, you're serving at church, playing the piano, whatever, like all these things. Rarely did I feel like, oh, who am I outside of all these roles? I never even thought about that. So, it was just constant feeling like somebody needed parts of me, parts of my body. And so when it came time to, we had like, ups and downs, like sexually throughout our relationship, but for the most part, it was fine. But there were times where I was like, I don't want to be touched. I need to feel like my body is mine. And for a long time, I didn't have words to explain what that meant. Because it was like, he would say, oh, you're so hot. I love like watching you undress or whatever, when I'm just trying to like change for the night or get into different clothes. And I'm like, don't even look at me. Like, I don't want to feel like an object. I just want to feel like I'm a person trying to get ready for bed. And it's not that I didn't want to feel sexy or sexualized. It's just that I'd never felt like during this time of raising kids that I felt like I ever had a moment to just not be a utility or an object, or I just felt like I could have a moment to just be myself, where somebody didn't need me or a part of me. And again, I didn't have words to express that until years later. Like, even I think after we left the church, I finally told him, I'm like, oh, this is why I was really frustrated. This is why I was like, really hated that feeling of just being like someone's like just like staring at you like a piece of meat, right? When the whole other parts of the day you're being eaten alive by your children, like all the parts of you. So yeah, so as far as like things like good little Mormon girl wouldn't do, it would be, I would say, masturbation. Like it would, just gonna go right hard left into the masturbation topic. But I never saw an issue with masturbation, like for me personally. And because I've been masturbating since I was 4 years old.
You just figure it out.
Yeah, I just figured it out. And I was like, it wasn't tied to sex. It wasn't tied to shame.
Yeah.
It was literally like scratching an itch to me. And I was like, oh, this feels really good. I would get in trouble sometimes with my mom if she ever caught me. And she tried to frame it in a way that was like, this isn't like good for you. It's not good for your body. Like God doesn't like it. And now I'm sure looking back now, she'd be like, oh, I'm so embarrassed I ever said that. So I continued throughout my marriage, never told my husband, my ex-husband at the time, never confessed it to any bishop. I just never felt like this is not your business. And they never thought to ask either, because as a woman, as a girl in the church, you're not spoken to about masturbation. Like the girls are not specifically. That's mostly,
thank God,
a male thing, right?
Yeah. Dodge that one.
Yeah. Because girls don't have a sex drive. Women don't have a sex drive.
It's an indicator of a wider problematic pattern, but thank God.
Yes, thank God, but also holy shit, right? But I continued throughout my whole marriage. Never told my ex. It was just like something I did in private. I'm like, it's nobody's business.
Really? Because I told my spouse, like leading in, like when we were engaged, to be like, just so you're warned, I know what I'm going to be doing and I'm pretty good at it. I'll teach you. Things will going to go pretty well for us. So I'm surprised you didn't ever tell. Well, did it aid in like helping you during your marriage? If you know what I mean?
I mean, oh yeah. Like I could easily orgasm because I knew my body.
Exactly.
That was not a problem for me from day one from our marriage. Never a problem. I was like, I knew what I wanted. They're
like, damn, I'm good.
Yeah. I knew I had a hard time expressing what I wanted from him specifically. Like he would always be like, what do you want me to do? Like, tell me what you like. That was hard. I don't know why. I think maybe because it felt so much like, oh, if I express this, then am I depraved? Or maybe it just felt like it was so private. Maybe because I would do this in private, that also like extending it out to like another person, I was like, oh, well, then if they know what I like, then that makes it not mine anymore in some weird way. I don't know how to explain that part, but
like they take possession over getting to do that cool thing, and it's not mine anymore. Interesting.
I don't know. I think there's a lot to that, but so yeah, but I did not get a toy to aid in this process until after we left the church. So please, everyone, cry.
Wow.
Shed some tears for past Mormon Carly that she never got to experience the joys of sex toys until she was older than 35.
That's crazy.
Isn't that really sad?
Wow. And do you feel like that was like explicitly taught to you from the church, or just that was your own rule? Like, I could never.
No, I don't think it was ever explicitly taught. Can you imagine the church? Any church leader like talking about sex toys, or like putting it in the First Strength of Youth, or putting it in some Ensign article, whatever it's called.
Were you ever in any like LDS Facebook groups for
women?
No,
I was not, because Facebook came out when I was married. I was already married. So I did not really join any LDS Facebook groups. I was on Baby Center for a minute. That was it was kind of like Reddit, but for moms, new moms. So they have all different sub forums. One of them was the LDS sub forum. So I was on there, and there was a lot of like sex talk here and there. And, the wild ones, the ones that would talk more explicitly about sex or sex toys, I was like, oh, they're on the wrong path, right? It just felt like not for me. That
so you were kind of prudish.
I was.
Interesting.
Oh, absolutely.
The girl who sits before me was prudish. The girl who sits before you was never prudish. Because I was going to say, there are a couple like LDS women's sexuality Facebook groups that were kind of big, and I like half helped like monitor some of them when I was Mormon.
Oh, okay.
Because I was really into helping Mormon women have better sex lives when I was Mormon. I loved those Facebook groups. And there's always a debate. There's like 10 debates that go around and around. And it's like, are sex toys okay? And some say yes, some say no. Because people are just like, that leads to the slippery slope of this. But I'm mostly surprised about how many men, especially Mormon men, are like, absolutely not, under no circumstances will I allow my wife to use something outside of my own fingers, because that means that it's like cheating. It's like they have a whole narrative about it.
Yeah.
And it's like, she'll do it more with you if you have this in the bedroom. What is your problem?
It's just a little buddy. It's just a little buddy that you have in the bedroom. Like, sometimes you need multiple angles to get to the spot, to the right moment. To the peak. All right.
Yeah.
No shame. It doesn't mean anything about your manhood. Doesn't mean anything about your penis or your skills. Like, it's just a tool in the toolbox. And it's great.
Yeah.
But you know what? I didn't join any Facebook groups. I don't think Facebook groups, like the groups part of it, came out until I was well into like raising kids and Mormonism. So that's why I was on Baby Center. But yeah, same kind of conversations there anyway.
But you were kind of prudish. It took you a while. What about, I'm not asking about porn use, but I am putting that conversation topic on the table for you to pick up and talk about however you want to.
Just as far as like my husband or what I thought about it, or so I was a fight the new drug crusader for a minute. And if anybody doesn't know what fight the new drug is, it's very much pseudoscience about the dangers and harms of porn, comparing it to cocaine, heroin, saying it's an addiction. It can harm you physically, spiritually, mentally. It's a lot of pseudoscience. And I think most sex therapists like disavow fight the new drug and organizations like it. And they have like, shirts that says like porn kills love and blah, blah, blah. So I was like, yeah, absolutely. Like, porn is bad. Porn is wrong. It kills relationships, kills love, whatever, marriage. It's, it's harmful. It's abusive. Like, the industry is exploitative. And so I was in that for a bit, until I would say probably even I started becoming more like progressive progressive, relatively speaking, like to like a really conservative Mormon that I was, I started thinking more progressively as my kids got older. I think probably having kids had a lot to do with it, because I started to think in terms of, abortion and why people have abortions. And I'm thinking, wow, like if I didn't have, especially when I went through postpartum anxiety, I kept thinking, if I did not have all the resources and support that I had, it's still as much support as I had, it was still so damn hard going through postpartum anxiety. And now I can't imagine like people that do go through that. Sorry, I don't want to get off of the tangent, that like don't have that support. So anyways, I just started to think more progressively. So I started to think a little bit more about porn. I mean, like, actually, like, it's not really the porn itself. It's like a lot of things can be harmful. A lot of things can be used compulsively in a harmful way, especially if people are made to feel like they have to hide it. And I think it had a lot to do with raising kids again, that the more I shamed my child for something, for a certain behavior, the more they did it secretly.
Mm-hmm.
And that started to get my wheels turning. It's like, it's not about the thing itself. It is the reason for doing the thing. It is the compulsion, this need to keep it secret, and then you feel shamed, and then you do it to feel better, to self-soothe.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's a cycle, right? So I started to kind of undo that part of my brain wiring before we left the church, and then much more so after. Like I probably knew on some level that my husband was watching porn here and there, but like it was like an don't ask, don't tell. Like I just didn't want to know, even though I was like really crusading for anti-porn at the time. I just was like, well, if I really talk about this a lot on social media, he's going to know. Like he just is not going to look at porn.
You were at that level. You're resharing Fight the New Drug stuff.
On Facebook, yeah. Oh, wow. I know. I'm so sorry.
I feel like I had a bizarro version of me back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
Like same feistiness, just opposite opinions.
Yes. I'm going to be like, if you think I'm annoying now as like an ex-Mormon, I was also very annoying. Mm-hmm. Like I'm right and I'm confident as Mormon.
Just a bizarre
Feisty.
World version.
Yes.
Yep. Go ahead.
So I just never really asked him, and he never brought it up. It was just not something that we just ever talked about. But then later, we leave the church, and I was like, and again, we didn't really ever talk about it that much, but I was just like, I don't care if you look at porn. Like, I do not care. Like, as long as it's like it's ethical and it's like consensual, who cares, right? And but it's just, it wasn't really a topic of conversation. And then I would teach my kids, like, hey, you're gonna see porn, like it's everywhere, but it's just like watching a movie with a fantasy movie, whatever. A lot of this doesn't work exactly like how you see it. If it makes you uncomfortable, you see anything, you can come talk to me. Just really putting things out in a way that felt open and not shameful. So I don't know, did I answer your question?
Yeah. And it reminds me, last time we were kind of talking about the difference between being raised in a sex negative culture versus a sex positive culture.
Right.
And I wouldn't have known really what that meant, because I think it can kind of get lost in translation on the scale of like permissiveness as an ex-Mormon who's more liberal versus somebody who's more conservative, traditional, and more into control. And I would absolutely agree that there are some areas where ex-Mormons can be too permissive and swing the pendulum a little bit too far the other way. I just think it's healthy, at least in arming yourself with the knowledge of just the definitions of what does a sex negative culture like we come from in Mormonism look like, how it shaped us, and then what a sex positive ideals can kind of look like. And then as you go throughout your ex-Mormon journey, just kind of keep those in mind and pick up ideas and thoughts and no one, I'm not going to come on here and tell anyone there's one right answer, one wrong answer, because it's a spectrum of permissiveness versus control. And we all come from different ways we were parented, differences in the blueprints that we were handed and so on. So, but it's important for just definition's sake, I think. So if you wanted to explain kind of what were some of the sex negative messages that you got growing up versus what you would teach your kids now, or just things that you have espoused that are more on the sex positive spectrum.
Mm-hmm. So sex negative would be, anything having to do with your body. It doesn't even necessarily need to be about sex itself. Just anything about how your body works, how you view your body, exploring your body, looking at your body, sharing your body with others, whether that's through photos or, one-on-one, multiple, whatever, is viewed as shameful. Like it's viewed as that's a no. Especially if you're not married. So like, let's say you're a teenager and you are masturbating, like that's a no. That's very negative. That's very shameful. You don't explore your body. You don't do anything to arouse yourself or other people. You don't wear specific things to try to look appealing sexually to others. Learning about your body, like just talking about your body, even like the processes of your body, like periods, erections, pubic hair, anything that's not like an elbow or a nose or an ear. Like if you're talking about it, you're not supposed to talk about that like openly. Like you do that in private, which means it's shameful. Like it's wrong to talk about that in pleasant company, right? Mm-hmm. So that would be sex negative. And I did learn a lot of that, whether implicitly or explicitly in the church, maybe in my family, because, maybe my parents had learned it that way. And it was just very much like, oh no, this is, no, you don't talk about this publicly. Like this is very private. This is like, you don't want to air your dirty laundry, whatever. So I did have a lot of that growing up, and where, I couldn't really talk to my parents about sex. Like definitely not. Like wasn't even really talking to my friends about sex that much. Anybody. And so, but I did realize when raising daughters, I thought I don't want to raise my kids that way. So even when they were very young, I thought, okay, how am I going to do this differently? Okay, I'm going to create an environment where they feel safe to come talk to me about their bodies at any age. So I would just talk about things in a very neutral tone. So when we talked about their bodies, so this would be like sex positive, meaning you're not just talking about things, bodily processes, parts of your body in a neutral tone. You're also talking about it in a positive, celebratory tone and language. So I'm talking about like, if they're getting a period, it's like, oh yeah, congratulations. Like, let's talk about it. Like, yeah, you get to do this. Like, you're just talking about it in a positive way. Let's say you catch your kid masturbating and be like, hey, like, buddy, whatever, that must feel good. And I know it does, but like, hey, like, let's just make sure you do it in the bathroom. Like just keeping it very, I don't know, almost like scientific to be like, hey, just make sure you're like washing your hands after, like it's like catching your kid picking their nose, right? Mm-hmm. You're not gonna be like, oh my gosh, that's horrible. Mm-hmm. Like whatever. I mean, sure, some parents do, but they'll be like, hey, buddy, just go in the bathroom, clean up, wash your hands when you're done, and you're good to go. Like, mm-hmm. Like some people don't like you doing that around them. So make sure you're doing it in the bathroom, in your bedroom, and then cleaning up after yourself. You're just mm-hmm. keeping it you're just not shaming any part of it. Mm-hmm. So, so that's how I had already started to raise my kids that way, even despite being Mormon, because I just knew how my own upbringing was, and I didn't want my own kids to feel that way. So, so I started to undo a lot of that. And I did. And I now, when I talk to my daughters, my kids, it's never about being like permissive or like prudish or whatever. It's my motto was always a harm reduction. That is how I think of in terms of everything, especially when raising kids. So we're talking about sex. Like, yeah, let's talk about the good parts of sex. And also, there are some consequences, just like there are to everything in life. There are some risks. So how can we reduce those risks and you can still enjoy this aspect of it that is enjoyable?
Yeah, that's incredible. I have a 10-year-old daughter right now, and as a matter of fact, after the last time that we spoke a week or so ago, I was like, I want to just always have an open dialogue with her. And I need to have like a book or something that we're just kind of reading together. And I went out and bought that very famous like American Girl book that I remember reading when I was in 8th grade that I found.
I forget what it's called, but yeah, I know exactly.
It's like something about you.
Yeah.
Like
the care and keeping of you.
There you go.
Yep, that's it.
And then it was cute. There's other additional versions about like feelings and such and such.
It's a great book.
Yeah. So
I bought my daughter's that book.
Oh, really? Yeah. So my daughter, she saw the pictures of like little breasts sprouting and stuff like that. And she's like, I don't want to read that. Oh my gosh, it's gross, 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 gross. And I'm like, I don't know how to tell her in words that she can understand the difference between like hardcore pornography and like an educational book, you know? And even after explaining to her the difference between those two, she's still just like, it's gross, it's gross, it's gross. And so the best I can do right now, I'm like, this is my first time being a mom. It's my first time raising a tween girl. I'm like, well, she's going to learn, I'm going to learn how to do this. But like the best I can do is just have the books, have the resources. We've read it every single night. She's trying to earn an iPad. So she's very motivated to read it with me. I told her that after we finish these 3 books, we will talk about it. Yeah. And she wants to be an artist. So I'm not just spoiling her. She needs, for that anyway. But yeah. So, she really likes having these conversations with me in the mommy and me time, but it is really hard to get a kid to have conversations where they just think it's gross. Yeah. And they I don't know how to get her to just accept like this is normal. Cause I think she thinks that everyone expects her to react that way. Yeah. And I'm just like asking questions like what makes you say that it's gross? Like what makes you, and I'm like, I don't know if I just have to do more exposure therapy of like, we're going to stay on this page where the girl is sprouting breasts and we're going to stay here and read every single word.
Yeah. That is super normal. Whether your kid is religious or not, some kids are like, don't care. Some kids do feel like it's more gross than other kids do. And I would say, like, I've had kids like that. Some kids don't care, are like much more inquisitive and curious about it. Some kids are like, ew, no. For those kids, I would just be like, oh, I knew that like the harder I pushed for them to learn about it, they'd be like, no, I'm not going to do it. So I would be like, okay, I would just be like, okay, like, I know it might seem a little gross and that's fine. Like you could think that I'll just leave the book here, like read it or not. It's up to you. And like, and I would find that they would read it like in private. And because they are curious, like no matter what they say or what they're saying, they are curious about bodies and how they work. They want to know. But it's hard when they feel forced into it. And it could be any topic. So for some kids, you have to know how to play it, right? And it seems like the more, maybe the more feisty they are, the more neurodivergent, I don't know, the more they need to do it independently. And also know that if they do have more questions, they can come to you. So you have to like create this space of like, okay, like, yeah, that's fine. Like, here it is. I'll just leave it here. Like, if you don't want to read it, that's fine. But I just gonna need to leave it here in your bedroom, just whatever. And just like not making a huge deal out of it sometimes helps. And but I've definitely experienced having a kid like that. So it's just, kids are hard, man. They are all different and
it's like
learn in different ways.
It's stuff that, like this conversation is all stuff that I can look back at my younger self and wish that I was armed with better knowledge and information. And worst case scenario, like having none of that information, I still turned out moderately okay. And so I'm like, she has aunts, she has friends, like she'll be okay. But worst case scenario, not always the worst if I'm still her mom. Like I know I'm creating an atmosphere that's going to be healthy. So it's just very overall what I'm trying to explain is this side of Mormonism, like both of us were still each doing things for the first time. Like, I'm hoping my kids will give me grace.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping their dad will give me grace as I give him grace. Like, we're all just figuring out this for the first time and taking advice from each other and what tips and tricks that we've learned along the way.
Absolutely.
Let's talk one more thing about sex, because I get this question a lot in my NGL app. And
love that app.
I know you love that app.
Best kind of questions come through there.
You will probably have similar questions to me where I'm like, okay, and skip, pervert, pervert, geez
100%.
Louise.
Yes.
No, I will not have a threesome with you and your wife. No, I will not send you nose fetish videos.
Should we compare? Just open the apps right now and be like, okay. Dude, should we say something? Okay. Let me find this app. Okay. Need to scroll back a few.
They don't keep all of them though.
I know. It only keeps them for so long.
Top one. I've had sex dreams about you. You got that one?
Ooh.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Always. Show it again. It wasn't the camera. It was on you.
Can I squirt? That's one of the questions. Okay.
That's what I meant to get. I was going to ask you that.
Can I slide into you? Oh, this one is, can I slide into you? Okay. And it was just like lots like that. Just whatever.
I wish you'd sit on my face.
Oh, yeah. I've gotten that
one. Yeah. It's probably the same person.
Like, can I come to you? Or I just came to you?
Oh, Jesus.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Lord.
Now I'm like,
not so pretty.
It really like doesn't bother me anymore. Like, I don't think it ever really bothered me. It was just like, I'm obviously not going to like share a lot of those. Sometimes I do, but sometimes they're just my fun little treat for me personally.
But I was going to say, if anyone's thinking of doing this job, or just dating generally, Carly, tell me what you think about this. I had to learn this after dating way too many people. I hate that this sounds obvious, but somebody finding you sexually attractive is actually not a compliment. Men will have sex with McFish sandwiches if given the opportunity. Somebody being sexually attracted to you is not a compliment. It is basically just the air that they breathe is complimenting women. So that's if it came from a really hot woman, that'd be a different story.
Yeah, no, I 100% like when when women compliment me, I'm like, oh, that's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah. My therapist tells me that she likes my outfit. I could just be like, and I'll just walk right back out of here. I will save myself some money on this session.
Thank you.
We're not done yet, Carly. Get your phone out.
I've had women DM me saying, I want to have a sexual experience with a woman. I want you to be my first experience. Like, I'm like,
do they think you're a sex worker?
I don't know. But I'm just like, oh, I'm flattered. Also, don't know about that, but thank you. Do you want me to be your first experience? Like, okay, thank you. But also, probably not.
It can be in their head. I give you full permission.
A little bit of a fantasy.
All the sex dreams that you want about me that don't involve me doing anything for you. Threesome or orgy. You down?
You down? Oh,
got that?
Are you down?
The amount of people that are looking for a woman to bring into their heterosexual marriage,
unicorn,
is outrageous.
It's like, what?
I'm like, if I was a sex worker, sure, that ain't me though. So I don't know what, especially like, it's like in sales when there's like cold calls. That's already a tall order. It's like, I don't even know who you are.
What my kinks are. Do I despise all men now? Like some questions like that. And just lots of like, oh, you're fucking hot. You're gorgeous. I'm like, okay, thank you.
Ex-Mormons are the hottest. That includes both of us.
Hottest. There we go. Are we entering the Cowgirl Carly era? Which is, I honestly can't see what that says.
Will you have a threesome with me and my husband?
Oh, yes.
I'm sure you get lots of those.
I've only had that a few times. Do I consume porn at all?
Why does it sound like do I like chug it? Do I take it down the hatch?
Do you consume it? Yeah, I'm just every day before breakfast with the vitamin. But
so if somebody does want to compliment your appearance, say they've been thinking about you, do you welcome those kinds of DMs, or would you be like, guys, you can keep this thoughts to yourselves? That's very nice, but should people? Is that avenue to express themselves open, or would you?
Oh yeah, I mean, who doesn't like being complimented? I mean, it's Yeah, I don't mind them. I'm like, yeah, like bring it on. I especially considering, and this is a whole nother topic, but and I did write a little bit about this in one of my Substack pieces where having sex appeal as a woman, as a Mormon woman, like are not really allowed to feel that or have that. I'm not talking about feeling or being beautiful or pretty or cute. It's about being sexy specifically, having sex appeal. And I'm sure that can sound like very vain on the surface, but it's a lot more than that. But it's owning the sex appeal.
Yeah, I definitely experienced that too.
Yeah.
I think the fine line to walk that I don't care for is I didn't know how bisexual I was at the start of my ex-Mormon career and yada yada. And giving a single fuck about the male gaze is a totally different story. So that's the fine line between so much of my Mormonism being about the patriarchy and fulfilling the wants and desires of a male-centric system to then fulfilling that on the other side as an ex-Mormon woman in a sexual manner.
Yeah.
Could not want to vomit more when I think about those wires were too crossed for me. Now I feel like I can be sexy and own that, but also have so little care for wanting to do it for the compliments of men.
Yeah.
Is a lot different. Again, that's why women compliments are 1,000 times better.
Yeah.
Love you guys. Compliment me all day long.
Yes, all
That's
day long.
fine.
Please do.
It's great. But it can just kind of shift modalities from Mormon to ex-Mormon if you don't kind of process and deconstruct why you're doing it, because we still take religion out of it just as an American. Like there is a very heavy emphasis on women's beauty standards fulfilling the male gaze.
So, yeah, and I don't want to get into this part too much, and I won't give too many specifics. But there was a time that I was on a different platform posting some things, and I did also write about this, that had to do with, taking nude pictures, posting myself, whatever.
Are these still available?
No.
And a collective sigh echoes through society.
I can neither confirm nor deny. Anyway, that was so interesting. That was a very interesting experience for me, learning process. So different than I thought it would be. And I won't talk about how it affected my marriage. I did talk about it in my Substack, so you can read about that if you want. But what I learned that I thought was really interesting is that it wasn't so much about who I was doing it for. It was about what I was learning about myself sexually. It felt like I could play a role. I could try on different things and say, oh, I'm going to play this role for this person, or I'm going to look like this, or I'm going to wear this for this person. Do I like that? Am I into that? It felt like a very safe way to explore my own sexuality in a way that, because I was not emotionally connected to any of these people. First of all, I didn't know any of these people really. They're all using aliases. I don't know who's signing up, subscribing, whatever. So I didn't know them as a person really. Maybe some of them here and there, I knew their names, whatever, but it was about me, right? It was about oh, this is my body. It's not God's. It's not my husband's. It's mine. And these parts of myself that I thought were oh, those aren't perfect. You've had kids, you've got stretch marks, who likes that, whatever. But then I'm taking home pictures of myself, and I know how to take pictures. I'm a photographer, and I'm oh, I am actually objectively beautiful. And I never would have learned that or felt that. And I just released all of this shame that I had felt over the years. And again, it was for men and women that were looking at these. And also it was they were living vicariously through me. And I would get messages saying your confidence, I get to release this shame vicariously through you because you are so confident in how you are doing it. And it was so different. And they were all so respectful, like so respectful. And again, it just really felt like I could try on different versions of myself in a way that felt really safe. I wasn't going out and sleeping with these people. I wasn't having like, it was just me in my room, like that's it, and a camera, that was it, and like posting, whatever. But such a different experience than I thought it would be. I learned a lot about myself and like what I might be into, what I'm not into, what does turn me on. Like, yeah, it was just very different.
Yeah. So even if those pictures are not available for anyone to go click on and view at this time, you took away some good lessons from it.
I did.
Who would have thunk?
I really did.
Yeah. Well, interesting.
Yeah. So,
well, we'll leave it there. We'll leave it there. Well, we can wrap up now. And while everyone's just ready to get off of this and scour any like random like anonymous
I'm so sorry. Yeah.
bootleg Reddit page. People are like, well, when are they gonna wrap this up? Because I need to go find that. But
it's just like it's also like they're just bodies, bro. It's just what's the big effort deal?
They're very good looking bodies, Carly. That's what we just described. But they're not just any bodies. But
anyway,
it's neither here nor there. Carly, what are any final like thoughts or opinions or anything else you'd like people to know? Any misconceptions people might have about you that you just want to, wrap up this amazing interview with?
What do I want people to know? Misconceptions. I don't know. I think some people think that I'm just a bitch, maybe. Maybe online be like, she just seems angry like a bitch all the time. Nah, I'm just well, actually, maybe I'm a bitch. I don't know. No, I'm just sarcastic. I'm very cynical. I have a very dry sense of humor. I love just shit posting sometimes. I'm here for the drama. I'm here for the dumbass men in my comments. I'm here for the roasting. I'm actually a very nice person. Kara knows. Like, I've had friends be like, yeah, I was actually like really scared of you for a minute. Like, I was intimidated by you. I'm like, why do people say that about me? I'm like, I'm not. And then I'm actually really sweet, and I can actually be really lovey-dovey sometimes, depending on who you are, and affectionate. And so, yeah, I'm a very multifaceted person.
Yeah, you contain multitudes, of course.
I contain multitudes, yes.
Yeah. People's online personas are curated to be an online persona.
Yes.
Yeah.
They are.
Yeah, well, I absolutely look up to you and the things you've been able to achieve and the confidence that you've had to put yourself out there in so many different ways. Just kidding. But no, Carly, you actually are really a gem, and I'm grateful that you came in to talk more about your journey with my audience. And you've lived a similar life to me, but also you're a few steps ahead, and you've learned some lessons that I will also take away from this conversation. So thank you so much for coming in and chatting with me on my podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me on again. Maybe not.
It's a seamless production here at this
but
studio.
I just love you, and I think the world of you, and think you're the best. So thank you.
Thanks, Carly. All right. If you guys want to follow more of Uncertainly Carly on all the platforms, I will leave all of her socials down below, and including your Substack articles that are really good.
Please support me financially, you guys. Sign up for my Substack. That's the only thing I monetize.
Yeah. And if you guys want to support my channel here on YouTube, obviously you've already subscribed earlier in this conversation if you hadn't already. This is the time to like this video and leave a comment for the algorithm. Tell me if you relate to the things that two ex-Mormon content creating gals like us have to say. It'd be so nice to read your comments. I try to read every single one. I also have ways to donate to this podcast. I have a 501c3 nonprofit called the Nuancehoe Foundation. So any donations through my donor box are actually tax deductible in the United States. So just write a blank check, go crazy. I have a Venmo at Cara B. The links will be down below for that. I have hired Julia, who's done a lot of work at Mormon Stories at Analyzing Mormonism. Julia is fantastic. Trying to pay her and pay my co-host for my Timmy Did What podcast, Ryan. Trying to build something sustainable and consistent. And if you want to support this podcast and these efforts, anything you can do would be just something that keeps us all tucked in warm at night. So if you are a donor to this podcast, or you have been, thank you so, so much. I hope we all can continue making more positive strides in this ex-Mormon space, telling more good stories and doing more interviews. So if you'd like to see this work continue, that is all good ways to support this podcast. It's available on Spotify or Apple Podcasts under the Mormon History Hoedown, wherever you listen to your podcasts. Make sure to leave reviews, comments. This is just a long checklist of things to do, but you don't mind listening to my voice and looking at my face. I have one last thing to tell you. Patreon. My Timmy Did What Patreon is out there in the world. You can subscribe to that if you like hearing about my Tim Ballard news with Ryan Fisher, and then my Nuancehoe Patreon for Hoetown. So that's another great way to make this work sustainable. So this is probably my last podcast in this studio here in my house that I've lived in for 8 years. So I'll be packing it all up.
Oh,
yeah, you know,
sad.
that divorce life, but we'll see. I tried to explain on my Instagram stories that we're not divorced yet, and we're not divorced, and we're just chilling. So I won't say we're divorced yet. We're not polyamorous either. We're just chilling. We're just raising our kids and co-parenting, but we are moving out of this house. This will be my last podcast here. So I will check you guys when I figure out a new studio. So thank you, Carly, again for being here. You're the best.
Thank you. You're the best.
And like I always say, don't let someone else ruin your life. You ruin it for you.
Amen.
All right.